Okay, we're back in action here.
Okay, you can just open the meeting as usual.
Thank you, technicians, for getting us going. Good show. Welcome, everyone, again. Witnesses, media, guests. As a special meeting has been, I first want to commend the three parties for working on this, working together to pull this special meeting together in a short notice. Today, our meeting is about the tariffs on steel and aluminum, repercussions from maybe both countries, workers, companies that deal with them. But we have two quick motions we got to deal with right off the bat. And one is, as everybody has, in order to pull this meeting off, we have to go to the Treasury looking for some money. So can somebody pass this budget for the meeting, for bringing witnesses here, and because this is out of the normal meeting. So, Mr. Allison, you move it?
Move it, yeah.
All in favor? Yeah. Good? That's carried. We also have another motion here. Ms. Ramsey, you want to deal with it, and we can get that done?
Because this meeting came together so quickly and we weren't able to have as many folks as wanted to appear here in Ottawa, I'm asking that we allow for briefs to be submitted to the committee from anyone who feels that they're going to be impacted by a date of July 31st, and then we will report these findings back to the House in a study. A report.
Very good. So we've done this before, so it'd be nice to have a limit of how big the briefing is. Remember we did this with TPP, so
5-page.
5-page. We'll add that 5 pages to it. We want it by the end of July. And okay, so all in favor? Good. So now we can get right into the meeting. This morning's meeting, we have 3 sessions. 5 witnesses first round and 4 and 4. We're going to try to get, of course, we're going to get all the witnesses in to speak their 5 minutes, and then it's going to vary on how much time the MPs have dialogue, but we're going to try to have as much dialogue as we can. So it's very important that witnesses keep it as short as they can, keep it under 5 minutes, and then we can have that dialogue. So, without further ado, I think we'll jump right into it, and we have with us Sean Donnelly. Sean, you're first up, if you can, and you're with ArcelorMittal Dofasco.
Well done, Mark. ArcelorMittal Dofasco.
Okay,
yes.
go ahead, sir.
President and CEO of ArcelorMittal Dofasco in Hamilton, Ontario, 5,000 employees. First of all, thank you for the opportunity to provide the views of ArcelorMittal's Canadian operations, not just Hamilton, on the impact of tariffs on Canadian businesses, corporations, and workers. A little bit about ArcelorMittal in Canada broadly. ArcelorMittal is Canada's largest steel manufacturer, shipping more than 6 million metric tons of steel annually and directly, and employing more than 8,000 people in 7 business units and 15 different facilities throughout Ontario, Quebec, and Nunavut. ArcelorMittal Dofasco in Hamilton, which I'm President and CEO, is Canada's largest flat roll producer, shipping more than 4 million metric tons each year to customers in Canada, U.S., and Mexico from our Hamilton, Ontario facilities. ArcelorMittal Long Products, based in Montreal, is Canada's largest long products producer, shipping more than 1.8 million metric tons to all 3 NAFTA countries each year. ArcelorMittal Tubular Products, based in Woodstock, Ontario, ships more than 120,000 metric tons to those same countries as well. Collectively, ArcelorMittal Dofasco, our long products and tubular products, ship nearly 30% of their total production to the U.S., to customers in the automotive, construction, general manufacturing, energy, and consumer packaging sectors. That's more than 1.7 million metric tons of steel. And ArcelorMittal also has significant affiliated steel operations throughout the U.S. and Mexico, and these facilities ship to Canada as well. So a little bit about the steel industry. It's an extremely capital-intensive industry. Between 2016 and 2018, ArcelorMittal's Canadian steel operations will have spent approximately 1.7 billion Canadian in strategic capital and maintenance to sustain our businesses. Our current and planned strategic capital projects are at risk given this current trade environment. That's more than $750 million Canadian in investments for projects that are currently planned to be complete in the 2020-2021 timeframe. In order to continue with our investments, our shareholders require us to demonstrate adequate returns, and obviously this is difficult given the competing jurisdictions we're dealing with in the U.S. Our investment returns are influenced by 2 major business risk factors in this current climate. One is obviously the U.S. 232 and our retaliatory tariffs, and the goal must be to permanently eliminate the tariffs between the 2 countries. Secondly, low-priced offshore imports. We must be able to operate in an undistorted market-based competitive environment. Canada's response to past and future threats from unfairly traded and diverted offshore imports is critical. So a little bit more about 232. As we all know, on June 1st, the U.S. imposed these punitive tariffs on imports of certain steel and aluminum products from Canada at rates of 25% and 10% respectively. The Canadian government has proposed retaliatory tariffs in steel and aluminum other products beginning July 1. The goal of the Government of Canada in its retaliation process must be reciprocal and proportionate. It also must encourage key industry stakeholders in Canada and the U.S. to increase pressure on the U.S. administration to permanently eliminate the 232 duties. So how can we do this? We recommend the Canadian government implement the 25% duties on steel products listed on Table 1 on July 1, with exclusions before or after on a strictly limited and verifiable basis. Initial emissions should be only considered in verifiable instances where either no Canadian production exists or where there is a narrow requirement for cross-border intra-company transfers of steel product to support Canadian operations. After the tariffs are in effect, exclusion should only be contemplated through a prescribed exclusion process and only where an included product cannot be reasonably sourced either domestically or from an alternative international jurisdiction. Any such process must be conducted transparently and in full consultation with Canadian steel producers and users, very similar to the process in the U.S. currently. This approach supports a path forward for the permanent elimination of the duties while, number one, mitigating the competitive disadvantage to Canadian steel producers resulting from the U.S. imposition of 25% duties on Canadian steel. Two, providing opportunities for substitution of U.S. steel product with Canadian steel product. Three, ensuring Canadian steel prices are not artificially suppressed due to the tariffs against Canada. Even with Canadian retaliatory duties, Canadian steel prices will still be below U.S. steel market prices, benefiting consumers. Four, result in U.S. steel companies paying duties on their Canadian shipments. And five, in response to the tariffs, steel manufacturing customers on both sides of the border continue to lobby the U.S. government for either complete elimination of the 232 duties or for reciprocal elimination of duties, for example, in the automotive sector. Currently, the U.S. 25% duty on Canadian steel shipments is being shared by Canadian steel producers and their U.S. customers, depending on commercial terms and circumstances. A Canadian 25% duty versus the U.S. would create a similar commercial dynamic with the U.S. steel industry and its Canadian customers sharing those costs. The policy alignment on duties may assist in getting back to the negotiating table to conclude a strong, fair, and effective NAFTA agreement. So without the strict Canadian application of 25% duties, we suggest there will be further weakening of Canadian leverage and prolonging of the U.S. 25% duties. On offshore imports, we've seen an increase in low-priced offshore imports into Canada, diverted from the U.S. since it imposed the dumping trade actions in 2015 and 2016. We have reacted with a recently filed dumping Canadian trace on cold-rolled steel against China, South Korea, and Vietnam, and we're looking at filing at other targeted dumping actions. However, the U.S. 232 duties against the entire world on all steel products poses a significant risk of increased low-priced offshore steel being diverted into Canada from all countries and all products. We're already seeing evidence of this in market.
You're almost ready to wrap her up? Okay.
A few minutes, Mark, thanks. As Canada is currently the most open steel market in the world, without government action via safeguards, we expect these imports to continue to disrupt the market negatively. And I think we've seen the EU announce their safeguards effective in the next few weeks. So we applaud the government for implementing the trade remedy modernization, legal and regulatory changes, increasing the funding for CBSA, resourcing alignment of our marking regime with that of the U.S., and in looking into the safeguard mechanism. So this unprecedented time requires unprecedented measures, and the government must now begin the implementation of steel safeguards to mitigate Canadian steel trade risks. The combined financial impact to Canadian steel operations of the U.S. Section 232 duties and low-priced offshore import penetration is in the millions, many millions of dollars. Left unmitigated for a prolonged period of time, this combined impact could result in reduced production, potential shutdown of operating lines, impacting over 1,000 direct jobs and over 4,000 indirect jobs in Ontario and Quebec, with significant implications to the ROI on current projects and impairment of future facilities investments. Prior to the imposition of 232, the offshore import penetration ArcelorMittal Dofasco was one of the most financially successful operations in North America. That is no longer the case. On conclusion, it's key for the government to, one, implement strong retaliatory measures against the U.S., not because we favor tariffs, but as a path forward towards reciprocal elimination of such duties and free market access to the U.S. and Canada. And secondly, implement global steel safeguard actions to enable a competitive and undistorted Canadian steel market. Thank you for your time and consideration. I'm available for questions now or after, Mark.
Thank you, Mr. Donnelly. We're going to go to Mr. Volpe from the Automotive Parts Manufacturers Association. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you. Just a quick piece about the APMA. We represent over 230 companies, 95% of independent parts production in Canada, 96,000 employees in Canada, 42,500 in the U.S., and 43,800 in Mexico. We're here to talk about the 232s on steel and aluminum, but I'm going to put them together with a threat for automotive and automotive parts. The threat is based on the powers conferred from the Trade Expansion Act of 1962, where Congress granted to the President the power to infer tariffs for national security reasons. The definitions are wide, but I think it's important to remember that the power is repealable by Congress. Whether this Congress has the gumption to do so or not is a different matter altogether. The implementation and the usage of them are challengeable in international trade court and certainly by commercial entities in U.S. District Court, where we can seek injunctive relief, and many of us are considering that option if it comes to that. Steel and aluminum are critical ingredients in the most valuable mechanical structural parts of a car. Stainless steels and other specialty steels used in automotive tooling are not available in Canada in the required quantities. That being said, steel buys for volume Canadian parts are directed by OEMs, and Canadian parts production directed buys essentially use Canadian steel and American steel. We are not a threat from a practical point of view to the American steel industry and steel interests. Unconventional negotiating tactics are the main issue. I know that's stating the obvious, but this U.S. administration is conflating 232 with NAFTA, and it doesn't appear to have any bias to U.S. automakers or U.S. part suppliers. They're actually antithetical to the Detroit Three. They're antithetical to the major American parts manufacturers. They are speaking directly to what they think is the automotive worker, past, present, or future. Their doctrine appears to be disruption while they're stalling competition to the benefit of their current investment prospects. I had occasion was supposed to meet Larry Kudlow at the White House 2 weeks ago, and then he had a heart attack the day before. So I met his staff, and his staff said to me that we'll get through this, but it's all related. And I mean, they don't hide the fact that they're conflating it. They tell you to your face. Now, of course, our response has to be Canadian-centric, but I think we can't be naive to think that that they're going to put it on two paths because we say they should. Canadian trade expansion continues, and from our opinion, sometimes with no regard for details, hurting the auto industry at a time when we're under the gun in NAFTA. Cars and parts are big and they don't travel cheaply. What works on PowerPoints and in talking points fail in life. We're having discussions now about a hurry-up offense on ratifying TPP, and in having other discussions where the currency that the Trade Department is using is content levels in automotive. Those are the same content levels that the Americans are asking for us to raise and are pounding us on 232. A 232 tariff, a 25% tariff on cars and parts would cause what we like to call a Carmageddon. The industry operates on single-digit margins, and it would grind to immediate halt with a 25% increase in price. A $32,000 car, that's an average price here, would immediately be unsellable at around $40,000. The first customer is not the U.S. customer, not the final customer, it's the dealer. And dealers are not going to take delivery of inventory, they're going to put them underwater. And if dealers don't take delivery in the U.S. of cars made in Canada by U.S. automakers, those U.S. automakers are going to stall production. There's only a finite amount of cars they can put on the front lot. When they do that, they're going to stop buying from Canadian auto parts suppliers, and Canadian auto parts suppliers are going to stop buying resins and stainless steels from American sources. It is an immediate grinding to a halt and an immediate impact on the market cap of public companies and the giant operational hits on private companies. The economic stability of Ontario is at risk, but equally in Michigan, Ohio, Indiana, Pennsylvania, Kentucky, Alabama, New York. That's action by itself would send those regions into recession immediately.
Sir, you want to just wrap her up?
I'm wrapping up. There's a lot of debate, and there's certainly a lot of debate within the auto parts constituency. on how to respond to steel and aluminum 232s. And while we have submitted for exemptions based on very strict protocols like the ones that Sean talked about, where availability isn't there, I think we need to be firm and resolute in our response on steel and aluminum. Otherwise, we're going to get punched right in the nose on auto parts and cars.
Thank you, Mr. Volpe. And the worst thing about chair is having to cut people off, especially when they're on a roll. And so I'll just remind MPs and witnesses, when that little red light goes on, you're on your last half a minute. Just get your thoughts together. Be good. We're going to move right over to Canadian Automobile Dealers Association. Mr. White, you have the floor.
Well, thank you very much. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Bonjour, mesdames et messieurs. Thank you very much for inviting us today. I'm very pleased to be here on behalf of the men and women that work in your local new franchise car and truck dealerships. The Canadian Automobile Dealers Association represents more than 3,200 dealers. We employ over 150,000 Canadians, and our members last year sold over $115 billion in goods. In our opinion, there is no greater threat to the health of the Canadian economy than the looming trade uncertainty between Canada and the United States, and more specifically, a 25% and negative for the retail automotive market, our minimum compared to the tsunami-like economic downturn that will occur should we be subjected to a 25% tariff or even to lose NAFTA. During the 2008 and 2009 global financial crisis, the Canadian automobile market decreased to a level of 1.4 million cars. In comparison, last year, the market represented 2 million cars. Now, in our view, the effects of 2008, 2009 economic situation would pale in comparison to what our members and the Canadian economy would face if we end up with a 25% tariff on our cars as a result of retaliation. Given the threat, and I'm sure you've seen it, the TD Bank issued a special economic report last week on the auto tariff scenario. In summary, $74 billion in exports stand to be impacted. They're estimating job losses at about 160,000 net positions. For our dealers, we estimate that could be 25 to 30,000 people, and of course, negative impacts to the Canadian dollar. One of the things that we're doing is we're working closely with our American counterparts at the National Automobile Dealers Association to highlight the downside of such punitive trade measures in the U.S. and to save us all from what we consider to be a destructive path. NADA is currently meeting with U.S. lawmakers together with manufacturer and supplier representatives to deliver a pro-consumer trade message to the U.S. administration. We need to press to get back to the bargaining table and secure an NAFTA agreement and avoid, at almost any cost, a trade war on automotive with the U.S. to save both sides of the border from a destructive path on this behalf. Now, what I'd like to do is I'd like to hand over, if I may, Mr. Chairman, to one of our members, Bob Verwey from Owasco in Whitby, if I'm not out of order.
No problem at all. Go ahead.
Okay, go ahead, Bob.
Verwey. Great to see a Dutchman here today. Another one.
Yes.
So welcome aboard, and you got the floor.
Thank you. Well, I'm very honored to speak with you today. A little nervous. I'm the little tall guy here. As a Canadian, though, I want to say thank you to all of you to be here and help us out through this situation. Owasco is a family-owned business. We have 3 automotive dealerships, a collision center, or RV dealership, and an RV rental business, which combined have an employment of 220 people. I'm the past president of the Trillium Automotive Dealer Association, and we're also actively involved with the CIIT, the Recreational Dealer Association, in its Ontario chapter. My family and I have put everything on the line in investing over $30 million in 2 new facilities. The first store is the expansion of our business, which is the building of a new $15 million, 41,000 square foot Audi store. Today, our builders told me, "You're lucky to build this steel now. You're lucky to build this building now, as the steel purchases before the tariffs. Prices of the steel have been fluctuating by 20%, which has placed a hold on a lot of projects. We can't even price out the new jobs." The second and recent purchase of a 41-acre property in Clarington, where we're expanding our RV business through another $15 million investment in the brand new store. We're hoping to employ an additional 50 people. Our future expansion plans include 4 new businesses on this site, which now we have to place on hold due to the price increase and the economic instability from these tariffs. Years ago, many trailer and motorhome companies were manufactured in Canada. But today, over 95% of the production is in the USA. Although they might be assembled in USA, about half of the aluminum and steel of these RVs are imported from Canada. Given the uncertainty, some motorhome manufacturers have already implemented a 10% increase in pricing due to the tariffs, and we've been warned that there's more to come. This will be disastrous not only to our business, but to the industry at large. This will have national impact. More than 2 million, about 15% of Canadian households own RVs. You should buy more, though. In 2017, the RV industry supported 66,000 jobs, and there's a $6.1 billion in total spending, and $3.4 billion was in sales and servicing the RVs. However, these tariffs will also border implications on service industries, such as our tourist industry. For an example, our motorhome rental department provides summer employment for an additional 10 college university students. Our rental fleet is over 90 pieces, a combined bookings of 5,000 nights, with a travel of 1 million kilometers each season. You can imagine the amount of, and most of these people come, 65% of our renters are from out of the country. You can imagine the tourist dollars that are produced. Due to the tariffs, we'll have significant increase in our pricing of our units, which will increase our competitiveness or decrease our competitiveness on the world tourism stage. People will go elsewhere. They won't come to Canada. As a business people, we take calculated risks. This drives our country in. If we have a downturn in the economy due to these tariffs, not only will it place put our viability of our business in jeopardy, we have no pensions. It'll be a terrible impact on our current and potential future employment as well. I look out my window and see the steel workers, the carpenters, the plumbers, all busy on our new Audi expansion today. These tariffs will create a ripple effect, reducing the work for all these trades. Our salespeople will sell less, people will travel less, our service departments will suffer. Unlike a temporary shutdown when the Leafs were in the playoffs, this is, and for one night, our showrooms get quiet, these tariffs will create a long-term downturn. For the livelihood of my personal family and my professional family, my coworkers, we need to make this right.
Thank you, sir. Now we're going to move over to the steel workers, United Steel Workers, and we have with us Ms. Gingrich and Mr. Newman. You folks have the floor.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak today. In Canada, the steelworkers represent 225,000 active members. We are the primary union in steel and aluminum sectors, representing tens of thousands of members in those sectors across the country. As an international union representing workers in both Canada and the United States for the past 76 years, the steelworkers strongly oppose the May 31st presidential proclamation on the extended Section 232 tariffs of 25% on steel and 10% on aluminum. Our International Executive Board condemns this decision, noting the absurdity of labeling Canada as a security threat. Canada and the U.S. must work jointly to remedy the real problem of steel and aluminum dumping, for which Canada is not to blame. Canada must provide immediate worker and industry support for those that are going to be affected. This government must also strengthen Canada's ability to remedy predatory and unfair trade practices, as well as use domestic policy measures to ensure the long-term health of the Canadian steel and aluminum industries. The Canadian steel and aluminum industry ship about $16 billion in products to the United States every year. That represents 90% of all steel exports. U.S. exports account for over two-thirds of the aluminum industry's total revenue. At least 22,000 people in Canada are directly employed in the steel industry, with another 100,000 indirectly employed. The aluminum industry employs 15,300 workers directly and a further 41,000 indirectly. It has been estimated that 45% of the steel industry will face immediate and direct impact. Steel is typically ordered on a 6-week cycle, so we will likely see the impact of the tariffs very soon. We are very concerned that the Canadian industry has already been harmed by the 1-month delay in the imposition of the tariffs by the Canadian government. We also note that the tariffs will deeply impact certain communities that are particularly dependent on steel aluminum, such as Hamilton, Ontario, or Alma, Quebec. The steelworkers believe that these tariffs will not only hurt Canadian workers, but they will also hurt American workers. Our union demands swift and thorough response to mitigate the impact on these sectors. First, we support the countermeasures announced by the federal government and believe that they must be comprehensive and immediate. Exemptions should not be granted. This is particularly important to protect products that are made in Canada and to bolster the domestic market. Any revenue emanating from the counter tariffs must go to the industry most affected by the Section 232 tariffs. Beyond the initial countermeasures, the government must introduce comprehensive supports to steel and aluminum industries, similar to the worker supports for the softwood lumber industry, as well as those recently introduced by the Quebec government in support of its aluminum industries. Measures must mitigate job losses as much as possible, including immediate support to industries in form of loan or loan guarantees or expanding domestic market opportunities. We also advocate for worker support through the EI and the ESDC. Canada must address the crux of the problem affecting North American steel and aluminum workers. Cheap imports of products with distorted prices from countries that are engaging in illegal and predatory trade practices. For example, bad international actors such as China prop up their steel industry, overproducing products that glut the international market. This is compounded by the cheap labor, poor environmental regulations that, along with the currency manipulation, artificially lower the price of steel. We support recent measures to prevent offshore diversion from tariffs previously imposed on other countries, along with measures aimed at transshipment and trade circumvention. The steelworkers should be given, the trade union movement should be given the right to initiate trade complaints. We would also appreciate that the government has increased the budget of the Canadian Border Services Agency to identify and stop steel from glutting the Canadian market. But more must be done. The imposition of these tariffs will lead to a surge in diverted products to our shores. In order to protect our domestic market, the government must launch WTO-compliant safeguard actions to protect, especially vulnerable domestic products. Finally, Canada must use domestic policy measures to react to price distortions that will result from poor labor, human rights, and environmental practices, including but not limited to countervailing duties. Thank you for the opportunity, and I look forward to any questions that you may have.
Thank you, sir. And now we're going to open up the floor to dialogue with MPs, and we got enough time for one round to get us through it. So we're going to start right off the bat with the Conservatives for 5 minutes, and I understand you're splitting time at Mr. Allison and Mr. Kerry, so go ahead. You folks got the floor.
I'm not sure you can split 5 minutes. We'll do the best we can to do that. 6 days ago, Wilbur Ross told the Senate Finance Committee why all countries, including Canada, were included in the 232. And Mr. Newman, you just alluded to that. He went on to say, the only way we're going to solve the global steel overproduction and overcapacity is by getting all other countries to play ball with us. And while they're complaining bitterly about tariffs, the fact is they're starting to take the kind of action which, if they had taken sooner, would have prevented the crisis. And so I guess my question is, given these statements, the committee's report on Chinese overcapacity and subsidies to steel, do you believe that the government took too long? I mean, do you believe Mr. Ross when he says that if we had taken action sooner, that we wouldn't be in this problem today?
Well, we've been preaching for a long time in regards to dumping from various countries, not just China. Our union has been very proactive. We have the right in the United States to file complaints as the trade union representing the workers and the communities. We don't have that access. We just got some recent access. So to me, this is not something new. China just didn't expand its production to over 1 billion tons. This has been going on for some time, and people have not looked at it now because of the seriousness there, because Canada is now under the gun. we're now going to be attacked with 25 and 10. Everybody's raising that profile, but we've been concerned about dumping for some time. We're currently dealing with, we've had pipe come to Saskatchewan right past one of our facilities that's come from another country. In the meantime, that pipe is being produced in Saskatchewan, homegrown or homemade, whatever you want to call it. So I agree that, look, this is a global situation that the countries have to come together and you have to deal with the cheaters. But don't blame Canada. Canada's not the cheater. Canada lives. You can't have a better neighbor than Canada if you look at the decades of history, be it the auto industry, be it the steel industry. So that you're right. We have to have laws that are going to protect the interests of our workers and our communities and the industries that we represent. So a lot needs to be done, but you're right. There needs to be some jointness on it. The fact is that we've been preaching about dumping for quite some time.
Okay, so you think if we had, according to Mr. Ross, if we'd acted sooner, possibly we wouldn't be in this tariff situation then we are today?
Well,
whether it's China or whoever. So.
Yeah, I agree that, look, we've been working at this, as I said a moment ago, for many, many years. It's just not something new to us. Our union has done in excess close to 100 trade cases in the United States, and we've only lost 6.
Okay.
This is on tire, rubber, glass, you name the whole gamut. Unfortunately, in Canada, we're moving towards that. We want to make sure that we have the ability to protect our members and the communities that they work in.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, that and that was what was disturbing last week, because I think Mr. Ross made it very clear the target isn't Canada, that they don't see us as the security problem. However, they've been trying to get the world to work together to address the greater problem, which is the illegal Chinese dumping. And it's starting to affect, even the threat of these things is starting to affect people on the ground. And I wanted to pose my question to Mr. Verwey, because I appreciate you being the little tall guy and representing a business on the ground. You're the guy that takes the risks, and the awareness for me is this can go very bad very quickly, the uncertainty, the trickle-down effects. So I was wondering if you could comment on what effects that you're seeing already. You mentioned some of them in your opening. What do you think the government should do now? And with the auto tariffs, as my colleague said, Mr. Ross stated that, if we did something earlier, and I know Minister Freeland was here last week, and she said she was actually in the meeting between Mr. Trump and Mr. Trudeau a year ago in Italy where this was brought up, but it's taken a whole year before they're addressing it. Can we wait a year? If they're threatening auto tariffs now, can we wait a year before we take some action?
I don't know your business as well as I know my business. All I know is the reason why I'm in business is because of a recession in 1992. I got a business for like $3, and we grew our business to where it is today. We made it through 2008. That was a tough time. We made it through. But again, I emphasize the amount of money we put on the line at my age was kind of ludicrous to do, but we did it again. If we have a big downturn, I'm in trouble. That's all there is to it. My house, my family, everything's on the line. So it makes an effect. Not only that, I'm responsible for 220 lives, 220 families that have children and parents. The decisions that I make reflect them, okay? And I have to be responsible for those decisions, and you have to be responsible for your decision for me. One thing for sure, I believe Trump is a bear. We shouldn't be poking him too much. The bear will start roaring. When the bear roars, he roars. We know how he roars. How you operate in your business, I know in my case, if we are not getting somewhere, sometimes we need to change people at the table. But I don't know. All I'm doing is asking you, please step quietly. I have 220 people. These people rely on us to make the right decisions. I can't afford to lay them off. They bought houses and cars and boats and RVs, hopefully, and they're relying on us, which we rely on you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. And we're going to move over to Liberals, and we have a guest at our table, Mr. Duran from Glengarry Prescott Russell. Oh.
Mr. Sheehan.
Oh, no, we're going to, sorry.
Well,
Who's on for the Liberals?
I'll go first, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
Well, I want to thank everyone for being here. Mr. Newman, I'd like to ask you a few questions. I do have an important facility in my riding, which you have a lot of your members, Evaca Rolling Mills, and obviously this has been a great concern to them, and I've been working on this issue for the past 6 months with them since the threat had come, since the report had come out. You've mentioned worker support, and first I'd like to understand your opinion on Evaco Rolling Mills is an American company, and what do you think about an American company posing a potential security threat to Americans? What do you think about that?
Well, I think it's ridiculous, and we've been on record for some time that that's the most ludicrous thing that we've seen, that Canada is not the threat. Historically, you can look at for decades, that's been the issue. When you talk about Evaco, an American company, in Canada, there's no such thing as a Canadian steel industry. All the steel producers today are foreign-owned, and we build relationships with them, be it Arcelor, be it whatever the case may be. But Canada clearly is not the threat. I mean, that's been proven time and time again. The 232 investigation, a lot of the high-ranking U.S. officials basically said, look, Canada's not the threat, including Wilbur Ross, which was mentioned here a moment ago.
Yeah, and in your opening remarks, you've mentioned tariffs must go towards where Section 232 will hit the most. And I'm wondering if you're working with your members, and if your members are working with management of various steel facilities on how to identify that, because I know some of them are pivoting to fulfill potentially a new market since June 1st. And how would you recommend to government to analyze where Section 232 will impact the most when we know some of the companies are pivoting to fulfill a new market?
Well, first of all, is that our view has been, and I think our membership that we represent in Canada are truly on the same page as we are, as I'm sure a lot of the employers, that the tariffs should have been imposed on midnight the same day that the U.S. Basically imposed the tariffs. There's no secret about that. We've always been very firm. In regards to our employers are working with our employees, they're very much concerned of what's coming down the pike, because this is kind of unthreaded water. The fact is that they're very much concerned, and as I said, that I've not seen the results recently with immediate impacts. If there's going to be layoffs, it works on a 6-week cycle when companies order their steel, so we could probably see relatively soon that that's taking place. But trust me, our membership, and I know that the companies are very much concerned in regards to what is transpiring, and they're very much concerned what's happening south of the border.
And you've mentioned worker support, but I didn't hear you go into some other details. I'd like to understand what type of worker support you'd like to see.
Well, it's no different than what the federal government made the announcement. We also represent the softwood lumber industry and the workers across the country, so it's the same devastation that's been, a lot of these communities have been affected, so in many cases there's been loan guarantees to the employers. There may be some exemptions under the employment insurance that they make some modification. It may be some retraining, so it's a variety of those things to make sure that those workers have an opportunity to sustain their families. So it's about making some changes that is going to benefit, because of this unfair action that has taken place by the government, is that we want to make sure that our communities and the employers in those areas are looked after. And if there's some way that you can expand the domestic market, which there's always room that you can look at, that'd be another area that we encourage the government to go towards. You know, there's still, unfortunately, in Canada, we still build bridges, which are infrastructures, and bridges, steel comes from foreign countries. And to me, that's been a heartache for me for a long time, that we sit by, and the fact is that where we have that opportunity to use the Canadian products, the steel produced here, we could utilize a lot of that product to go and create the jobs that are needed in the communities. We have the ability to produce it, no different than anybody else in the world.
Thank you, Mr. Newman. And Mr. White, you've mentioned that you're collaborating with some of your U.S. counterparts on the other side of the border. Have you gotten some feedback in terms of do you feel they're being heard down south by some of the decision makers down there, or?
Yes, I do feel that they're being heard. The National Automobile Dealers Association is a very prominent organization, and they've not only gone at this together, they've gone at this with manufacturers, with the parts industry, and with other associations across the country. Of course, they're being careful in terms of their approach, and my understanding is that there are there are ongoing meetings. And from our perspective, we are working to ensure that we are aligned in terms of our strategy, in terms of our position on this. And but at the end of the day, yes, I do believe that they're being heard.
Thank you. Your time is up, and we're going to move over to the NDP. Ms. Ramsey, you got the floor.
Thank you so much, everyone, for being here today. And you've brought us certainly a dire message. As a 19-year-old auto worker from southwestern Ontario who was laid off during the 2008-2009, I feel it very keenly. And I think about all the folks that are working across all the sectors that you represent and the real fear that they have about their jobs today and what we're facing. You know, I think that the worker income and support is critical. And no one at this point knows what the plan is for workers from the government. So, Mr. Newman, my question to you is, has the government reached out to you, and what have those conversations been about how to support workers that have been impacted over this last 20 days?
No, there's been no reach out to us. We've submitted letters to the Prime Minister and Minister Freeland, and I believe it's also Minister Morneau, I should say, in regards to our concerns. First of all, there's numerous other elements in regards to the transshipment, and in that same letter we also addressed the fact that we're very much concerned about making sure that where people are going to be affected, they have those supports. So we've not had any dialogue at this point.
Well, that's shocking and I think deeply concerning, because we've now had 20 days of these tariffs being implemented, and we're 5 days away from the retaliatory ones coming into place. And we heard from, I can read back some of the things we heard today: Carmageddon coming, tsunami-like economic downturn, 20, 30,000 people losing jobs. Like, this is a very pivotal moment for the government to step up and to stand behind working people. So I'm disturbed to hear that that conversation hasn't happened. Another thing I believe that Canada has not moved quickly on is the prevention of dumping and transshipment. We did a study early on at the Trade Committee here on this issue with some recommendations that we put forward to the government. The government came forward with some things that they would do, but we still haven't seen them implemented on the ground. And we're deeply concerned about the impact that's being layered on top of all of these uncertain, tariffs and everything else that's coming from the U.S. My question, I guess, to Mr. Donnelly and Mr. Volpe is, what can Canada do immediately? Mr. Volpe, you mentioned a couple things potentially getting into domestic courts. What can Canada do immediately to protect the industry?
Maybe, thank you, Tracy, for your comments. I think immediately, and I mentioned earlier, and Ken did as well, about safeguards. We have to protect Canada from diversion of offshore imports from everywhere else. We're in open market right now, open season. And it only takes a boat or two of steel from these other countries unfairly dumped into Canada that's going to distort our markets. We're already seeing market distortions between Canada and the U.S. It's just going to drive a further wedge and impugn us and hurt us even greater than it is right now.
It's important to split domestic policy and foreign policy on this. I think the government's doing fine on foreign policy. We have to stop pretending we're dealing with a rational counterparty. These people are caging children at the border. So, discussions on auto tariffs are kind of weird. From a domestic point of view, though, I think the government needs to plan for the fact that an irrational actor will likely move to impose these tariffs, and then start to schedule how long it would take to have a successful fight, either in U.S. District Court or at the International Trade Court, and start to work backwards from what impact that'll have on the industry. Certainly, from an operational point of view, you really have a very short period of time before everything grinds to a halt. And then you just have to kind of start picking your spots. Is the government needs to think if it's going to be in the business of supporting American companies that are making cars and parts and materials in Canada against an action by an American government. Certainly those companies employ Canadians. I mean, tens of thousands of them. It's a big mess that would be best to avoid if we close a NAFTA deal. So I think foreign and domestic policy converge on, can we get back to the NAFTA table? And certainly on automotive, the industry has expressed, the Canadian industry, at least the part that I represent, has expressed that there are acceptable terms on the table. And so let's do what we can to get to it.
So, you've each mentioned the cycle that it takes. That really we're in this bubble where no one has experienced kind of what's coming towards us. What are you doing individually to prepare for that, and how can the government support you, both in your businesses and for workers?
Some short answers would be good.
Let me just say something really quick. Look, these are the members I represent are commercial interests that get hurt by improper use of statutory vehicles, have access to a U.S. District Court, go in and get an injunction. The government pursuing the same objectives that the WTO provides a really good cover for us. And let's not be shy about the fact that I know the minister is currently saying these are illegal actions on illegal use of 232. I think we're looking forward to the government supporting the independent businesses that show up in court, whether that means being part of the action or not, but taking a stand to say we're with you as part of a Team Canada approach, it would be appreciated.
Thank you. And that wraps up the time, and we're going to go to the member from Sault Ste. Marie. Mr. Sheenan, welcome, and you got the floor.
Well, thank you very much, and it's an honor to be invited here to participate on this very special, important meeting today. I'm from Sault Ste. Marie, and we have two major steel players there that many people are familiar with, Algoma Steel and Tenaris Tubes, that has an operation in the Sault and Calgary. We're in a very unique situation where about 60% of the exports from Algoma Steel go into the United States. And I wanted to thank people like Randy and Tracy and some other folks that, we traveled together down to Washington on two separate occasions to tell this story that the media had dubbed the charm offensive over the last 10 months. And Algoma is a perfect example of the integration of NAFTA and how it works so well. Steel is made by steel workers in the Sault, but it's made with coal from coal miners and iron as well from iron miners from 4 states. It's put into the transportation network. It's put across the bridge and come through on ports, and it's made into steel. Then it goes back in the supply chain, into auto, into manufacturing, into defense. And so one of the questions I just wanted to ask Ken and Sean is, what kind of effect are these tariffs going to negatively affect the United States and the workers there? I saw in the Washington Post today, they talked about the first layoffs in the United States related to steel tariffs. A company just lost 60 employees. It's an ale company down in the States, and they're set to close probably in a few months. So just some comments on the negative effects that these tariffs are going to have on the Americans.
Thanks, Terry. I think we're first of all, we don't support tariffs. We want these things eliminated outright, both sides. That said, they're in existence, so we need to, as we said earlier, we need to retaliate proportionately where steel can't be made in Canada. We need to inflict pain, unfortunately, on U.S. consumers of steel, so they create the impetus in the states to reverse these decisions. So until you see that, they don't give a heck about us, right? They don't care about us. They don't care about our profitability. I sit with CEOs of the U.S. steel mills on the American Iron and Steel Institute, and they're laughing. They're laughing. They're making all kinds of money, and they don't care about Canada. They don't care about their steel shipments into Canada. So we need to inflict pain on U.S. steel consumers, unfortunately, and that's where the pain has to be felt, and the insurrection has to happen in the U.S., not in Canada.
Thank you. Ken?
Well, as I said earlier, a lot of the companies that we deal with, there's no such as Canadian. They operate on both sides of the border, so there's no doubt there's going to have an effect. If you look at the auto industries, there's some parts that may be made here that they don't have the facilities in the United States, so that's going to have an effect on the auto industry. And if you look at the integration and the $1 billion of trade that crosses the border every day, there's no doubt that the American workers are going to be affected. And, I've heard the comment earlier in regards to saying that, look, don't poke the bear. Well, I'll tell you what, if you don't poke the bear, he's going to eat your lunch. And that's exactly what's coming down the pike. The fact of the matter is that on the tariffs, I think you have to be tough on it. Look, we're a sovereign nation. We're proud of the work that we do. We're proud of the employers that we have. We're proud of the communities. Be it the Sault, there's a long-standing history there. And the fact is that don't punish your best neighbor. That's just not the situation. Come to the table with respect and dignity. That's how it works. We deal with a lot of the people at this table and around here when it gets to collective bargaining. You don't become a bully. And the fact is that this is about fairness and justice for the country. There's a long-standing history. So you're right. There's on both sides of the borders, working people are going to get hurt, and in many cases, the consumer is going to pay a much larger price.
Thank you. Next question, too, is that we were talking about what Wilbur Ross had said, and Wilbur Ross said a lot of things that I disagree with. Canada has one of the strongest trade systems in place right now. We have well over 70 measures in place against steel dumping. In 2015, just after a few months of being elected, the steel industry, the unions, were in my office saying there has been virtually no protection against dumped steel. We need changes. After a few months, we put in place in the first budget measures that created a longer term in which these tariffs applied. We went and consulted, we heard. 2016, we put in a particular market situation, anti-circumventing, scope rolling union participation. And then when the Prime Minister visited the Sioux and many other places, talking with the United Steelworkers, with the steel producer, Algoma, and the mayor and all the stakeholders, he enacted more money for more guards. It's a CBSA, putting in a lot more money and a whole bunch of other things. So my question is quite clear, is without those in place, is there a steel industry or an aluminum industry under the current situation?
Is that all right? Mr. Barry jumps in? Okay.
I just want to make one comment, because I'm on the floor, I'm in the war zone. The statement of the consumer will pay the price, I'm saying they won't pay the price. The retail will stop. Okay, that's what I want to say. Okay. The retail will stop. I've been there before. It happens in our tourist business, happens in our car business, happens in our trailer business. When we had the decrease in our dollar, we had a 25% increase in our payments. Boom, our business stopped. That's what happens. So the consumer will not pay the price. Okay, so you will lose money. The federal government lose money because I write my tax dollars this month to you, and it's a lot of money that goes to the government. You'll lose money too. So this ripple effect is a huge ripple effect. That's all I want to say.
Well, thank you. And Shane, your time is up. And yeah, and that ends our first round. And I'm sorry for the late start, but we got through it, and the witnesses all got their submissions done. Thank you, folks, for coming. This is huge, not only for your lives, but all the people you represent. And thank you for coming. And our committee's going to take your submissions very seriously. And we're going to suspend. We're going to only go try for 5 minutes, and then we'll get right back to the next crew of witnesses. parties pulled together to hear the impacts on the tariffs that are being imposed by both countries, the repercussions from the workers to the manufacturers to the consumer. And we're very appreciative of the witnesses that are here before us right now. And if it's your first time in front of our committee, we try to keep your briefs 5 minutes or less. If it's over after 4.5 minutes, I'll hit the red light, and you'll know you're coming on the end of your time if you can wrap up. And the same with the MPs. We'll do the same when their time comes up. So without further ado, maybe we'll start off with the Canadian Labour Congress, and we have with us Ms. Norgang and Mr. Roseau. Welcome, folks, and you got the floor.
Thank you very much. Merci aux membres du comité aussi.
I'd like to also thank the members of the committee for this opportunity to appear before you today and for your invitation. On behalf of the 3 million members, more than 3 million members of the Canadian Labour Congress, I want to thank the committee for the opportunity to present our views and opinions on the impact of tariffs on Canadian businesses and also on workers and communities.
Canada's national and international unions, along with the provincial and territorial federations of labour and over 100 labour councils. Employees represented by affiliated unions of the CLC work in virtually all sectors of the Canadian economy and all occupations in all regions of the country. Canada's unions support the Canadian government's action to date against the unjustified and unwarranted American tariffs on steel and aluminum. Trump's aggressive trade provocations against Canada are a totally unjustified and unwarranted sanction against a fair trading ally. Canada's unions have asked the federal government to put together a rapid response working group with industry and worker representatives to develop a package to support workers, businesses, and communities. The work of the Rapid Response Working Group would complement the federal steel and aluminum trade monitoring committees as well as any provincial responses. As part of this joint work, we recommend a comprehensive jobs impact assessment be completed to inform the ongoing development and deployment of industry and workplace assistance measures. We see 3 critical areas where government action will be necessary. First is the fact that Canadian producers will have temporarily lost U.S.-based customers. We encourage the federal government to explore a wide range of possible industry supports, such as loan guarantees for small and medium-sized businesses to help them weather the storm, policy measures that prioritize the use of Canadian-made steel and aluminum for energy projects within Canada. This would enable the government to meet its stated aim of developing Canada's energy resources in an environmentally responsible way. Second, Canadian producers and manufacturers will now be competing with the excess supply of steel and aluminum diverted from the U.S. market. Elements of a package to address this could include action by Canadian International Trade Tribunal and Canada Border Services Agency to address any trade diversion caused by U.S. measures. Additional resources devoted to border agents and inspections to ensure Canadian market isn't flooded with dumped products. We welcome the government's recent introduction of regulatory changes related to anti-circumvention investigations, scope proceedings, and price distortions, as well as recently announced funding for the new officers. We look forward to working with the government on the implementation of these changes. Finally, the steel sector supports 22,000 direct jobs across Canada. Aluminum sector supports nearly 10,000 direct jobs, mainly in British Columbia and Quebec, with supply chains and related industries affecting more than 100,000 additional workers, as you heard earlier. Worker support packages should keep in mind the impact extends beyond directly employed workers to workers in related industries and in small communities. We recommend building on the package developed for the softwood lumber industry, as my colleague said earlier. Work with the provinces to provide additional investments for training supports to allow affected workers to upskill with income supports. Extensions of EI duration for workers in affected regions. Extend EI work sharing, an adjustment program that helps to minimize job losses when there is a temporary slowdown in business activity so that employers may continue to operate And finally, we appreciate the committee taking the time to hear our views on this important issue. We look forward to working with the federal government to ensure that we can mitigate job losses and community hardship in the face of this serious economic threat. Merci.
Thank you, sir. And we're going to move over to Mr. Gallimberti, the president of the Canadian Steel Producers Association. Welcome, sir. You got the floor.
Good morning, and thank you to the honorable members of the committee for the opportunity to present as this committee undertakes a study on the impacts of the Government of Canada's countermeasure actions against the United States in response to tariffs on Canadian steel and aluminum products. This is, I believe, my fourth time in front of this committee this year, so thank you very much for your attention to this matter. If I understand parliamentary procedure correctly, I think I get my next visit for free, so I'll look forward to that.
Well, stay around for the free pizza later.
The CSBA is, of course, the national voice of Canada's $15 billion primary steel production industry. As has been mentioned previously, direct employment in steel is approximately 23,000 Canadians, supporting another 100,000 indirect jobs. On June 1st, 2018, the United States imposed punitive tariffs on the imports of certain steel and aluminum products from Canada at the rates of 25% and 10% respectively. These are unilateral and illegal trade actions by the United States, which pose an unacceptable and immediate threat to investment and employment in Canadian steel manufacturing. Our member companies strongly support the Government of Canada's announced intention to impose tariffs on imports of steel, aluminum, and other products from the United States, representing the total value of 2017 Canadian exports affected by the U.S. measures. We believe this to be an appropriate and proportional response to the U.S. administration's actions and an essential step in supporting Canadian steel companies and their workers. In that regard, it is the consensus position of the Canadian Steel Producers Association that items included in Table 1, published in the Notice of Intent, should be subject to tariffs at the rate of 25% when those tariffs take effect. Only in verifiable instances, either where no Canadian production exists or where there is a narrow requirement for the cross-border transfer of a specialized product within the same steel-producing company to support Canadian operations, should initial emissions to that list be considered. Once implemented, if it is determined through prescribed exclusion process that a given product cannot be reasonably sourced either domestically or from alternative international jurisdictions, only then should relief or exemptions from the applied tariffs be contemplated. Any such process should be conducted transparently and in full consultation with Canadian steel producers. And I would note that the U.S. process for gaining an exclusion from the 232 tariffs is rigorously public by its nature and predicated on the provision of a full factual description of the specified product, its properties, and the quantities in question, and also allows for any company or individual in the United States to file objections to the exclusion request within 30 days of those being posted on the Federal Registrar's website. So they are quite ambitiously public about the process. Canada's steel producers have no interest in seeing valid exemption requests denied and do not want important economic activities disrupted. But where Canadian steel products are subject to tariffs entering the United States, equivalent tariffs should be imposed on U.S. steel products entering Canada. To take any lesser action both undermines the notion of a truly reciprocal response and would fail the Government of Canada's commitment of full support for steel and aluminum workers. We understand the unfortunate reality of tariffs implies a potential cost escalation and/or the adjustment of established supply chains for steel consumers. We have worked and will continue to work tirelessly to demonstrate to the U.S. administration the need for a full exclusion for Canada from the 232 tariffs in order to maintain mutually beneficial trade between our two countries and preserve critical integrated supply chains. We would encourage implicated steel consumers with Canadian operations to undertake similar advocacy efforts in the United States, furthering the notion of our combined benefit from free and open trade in North America. Through a true Team Canada approach, we should hope to not only convince the United States to exempt Canada from tariffs in steel and aluminum, but also discourage the U.S. from moving forward with 232 tariffs on the imports of autos and automotive parts from Canada. The CSPA also believes that steel producers from the United States who have championed action against Canada in the context of the 232 should not be allowed to gain any advantage associated with exemptions from Canada's responsive actions. Clearly, a group of foreign companies who have consistently chosen to work against Canada's interests should not be granted exemptions of any kind from responsive measures. The Canadian steel industry finds itself today at a significant competitive disadvantage in the United States because of these tariffs, being artificially excluded from by far our largest export market, while at the same time working with the government on appropriate measures like a safeguard action to contend with a potential flood of global steel displaced from the U.S., will necessitate an increased focus on the domestic market to ensure we can keep selling our products and employing Canadians. Exemptions or exclusions from Table 1 imply not just continued access for American producers, but unfair and damaging access for American producers sheltered from competition in their home market by the 232.
Excuse me, sir, can you wrap her up there?
2
Good.
seconds. This is unacceptable. Canada's steel producers already feel the impacts of these unacceptable U.S. tariffs imposed under the absurd pretext of national security. We recognize that our customers do as well. We are willing to work cooperatively to ensure sufficient steel supply is available in Canada to support vital industrial building and manufacturing applications. Where reasonable alternative means of supply cannot be found domestically or from non-U.S. jurisdictions, we are, of course, prepared to collaborate with implicated steel consumers and the government to determine if an exemption is appropriate. We cannot, however, support exemptions from the Government of Canada's countermeasures list where comparable product is made or otherwise reasonably available in Canada. So thank you again for your time, and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, sir. And we're going to move over to Mr. Winkler. He's President and Chief Executive Officer for Evraz of North America. Go ahead, sir. You got the floor.
Good morning, honorable members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today regarding the Canadian steel industry in relation to the 232 tariff. Evraz North America is the leading producer of large diameter line pipe, employing over 2,100 people in Saskatchewan and Alberta. We recently completed a $270 million investment in Regina on leading-edge steelmaking and pipeline technology for quality and safety. We're in the midst of a $30 million investment to produce high-strength casing and tubing in Red Deer. We also employ over 1,500 people in the United States and are the largest producer of rail steel in North America, as well as the only producer of plate in Western North America. We're extremely integrated between the United States and Canada, sending rail steel from Colorado to CN and CP, and sending steel from the U.S. For pipe production in Canada, and most significantly producing pipeline pipes in Canada for Canadian and U.S. operators. In fact, we also send some plate from Portland up to Camrose, which subsequently goes into U.S. and Canadian pipelines. The U.S. measures have a tremendous immediate impact on us and our U.S. customers. Our large diameter pipe business is very project-oriented. Section 232 tariffs could delay U.S. projects and cost U.S. construction and energy jobs. For our own operations, it has caused a reluctance to ship large volumes of pipe destined for pipeline projects across the border due to the tariffs and the delays in posting product exclusions. This in turn is causing working capital issues for us, disrupted operations over being overloaded with pipe, and delaying realization of revenues for Evraz North America. We will keep impressing upon U.S. legislators and the administration how important Canadian steel is to the U.S. economy. Perhaps more importantly, our ties between Canada and the U.S. are deep, with many of us having fought side by side against oppression and for freedom throughout the world. We ask the government to continue its strong advocacy of Canadian steel while also working towards an agreement on a modernized NAFTA. Over the last 18 months, the government has been supportive in fighting for steel. As a result of the 232 measures, we are working closely with the government in an expedient manner, but we will need continued close collaboration and effort to defend our workers to get through this in the short term and again in the long term. In addition to taking steps to ensure free, fair access to the U.S. market, the government should consider taking significant measures to ensure a viable domestic market for steel. Energy tubular imports, as a result of diversion of pipe otherwise bound for the U.S., surged 70% in 2017 and have increased an additional 18% in 2018 with no increase in drilling activity. At the same time, raw material costs in Canada have been significantly driven up by increased activity of U.S. steelmakers. That is not the case for our overseas competitors. This triple impact of massive increases in diverted energy tubulars, higher raw material prices, and effectively closing of the U.S. market will have a significant impact on our Canadian operations. As the Minister of Finance has stated, a study of global safeguards is underway. We know adopting such measures are very serious, but we are in a serious situation with the domestic market deluged by low-priced imports and significant barriers to the U.S. market. Strong action is necessary. Finally, trade measures by the U.S. underscore the importance of the energy market here in Canada through pipeline construction that grows oil and gas exploration and production jobs, good-paying, permanent middle-class jobs. Building LNG export facilities is vital for Canada's energy economy. We are ready to build those pipelines and pipes from recycled steel with the lowest carbon footprint in the world for Canada, in Canada. I am confident we can continue to grow well-paying middle-class skilled jobs if the U.S. and Canada can return to stable integrated steel trade. We can and will invest significantly in Canada and the United States. I look forward to answering any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Winkler. And we're going to go to Mr. Young, Senior Commercial Sales and Marketing Manager for Janko Steel Limited. Welcome, sir, and you got the floor.
Thank you. I'd like to thank Dean Allison for the invitation and the Standing Committee for providing me the opportunity to speak to you today on behalf of Janko Steel. I will comment on the recently implemented American steel tariffs, their impact on our company and the Canadian steel industry as a whole. We are also proposing a viable solution and plan to compensate companies like Janko Steel who are adversely affected by these tariffs. Janko is a steel service center located right in Canada's steel town, Hamilton, Ontario. We supply carbon flat-rolled steel to a wide variety of customers and industries buying that steel from Canadian steel mills. It is a 30-year-old family business which today provides employment to over 180 people. Our business has grown over the years to this number of 180 employees with significant sales and development in the United States. Tons sold in the U.S. have increased 270% since 2014, and they now represent 30% of Janko Steel's business. Needless to say, the tariffs have created very difficult issues for our company. Significant negotiations and discussions had to take place to determine how the additional tariff costs would be paid on existing orders. Some customers acquiesced to pay some of the tariff, while others refused to pay anything at all. Some have canceled their orders with us. And in some cases, Janko is paying the full cost of the tariff in order to maintain the customer relationships that have taken us years to develop. We have also been forced to cancel some of our orders and hold off placing new orders with our Canadian steel mills. The fact remains that if our U.S. customers had bought their material from an American supplier, they would not be affected. This plays right into President Trump's agenda and is directly threatening the business of Janko Steel and the health of the Canadian steel industry. Longer term, we are very concerned with our U.S. business landscape. Most U.S. customers are currently unwilling to place orders or engage in any long-term business commitments due to the tariff. Every day, we are finding that we are no longer competitive when compared to U.S. American steel service centers, and our American customers are now sourcing new supply from their local market in order to secure greater cost certainty. The longer Janko remains uncompetitive in the U.S., the more permanent the damage will be to our business. We need an immediate plan as to how we will remain competitive, and without assistance from our government, this critical U.S. business will be lost. An immediate solution would be to get the NAFTA deal done. We understand everyone is working hard at this, and a successful deal would allow us to go back to business as usual. But here is our problem. We have seen our business in the U.S. decline by 60% in the month of June compared to April and May of this year. This decline in sales will become permanent unless we get help. As a direct result, we have frozen all hiring, including the suspension of our initiative to hire numerous summer students. The worst case, we will have to consider layoffs for the first time in our company's history. Another significant problem is our cash flow. We have to pay our customs broker within 5 to 6 business days so they can remit to the U.S. government in 8 days. We've already incurred in excess of $330,000 in tariff payments for the first 18 days of June. Given that customers do not pay their invoices for 50 to 60 days, we will have to pay an estimated $670,000 to $800,000 to the U.S. government before any receivables are even collected by our company. This is very difficult to manage, but here is a plan. Al Schutten, the owner and president of Janko Steel, proposes that the Canadian government implement the following as a possible short-term solution. Canada is placing a tariff on U.S. steel imports starting on July 1st. Those funds collected should immediately be made available to companies like Janko Steel who are shipping steel into the U.S. and being charged the illegal U.S. steel tariffs. These Canadian companies should then be entitled to a payment equaling 50% of the tariff payments that they have been required to make to the U.S. government. That would go a long way to allowing Janko and other steel companies to remain competitive, maintain their existing U.S. business and employment levels, and minimize the long-term loss of our U.S. business. It will also help to alleviate the cash flow issues that we face to a degree. We are aware of the good work that the Honourable Chrystia Freeland and others have done so far challenging the illegal 232 tariffs, and we expect success from their initiated case with the WTO. We are also asking that when the U.S. is forced to repay the tariff funds that they have collected, these funds be used to make Canadian steel companies financially whole for their verified tariff payments. The money would also be shared with any U.S. customers who have helped by taking some of the tariff payment burden. The success of Janko Steel's business model is predicated upon having an open trade border with the United States. If these tariffs remain in effect for much longer, our current business model simply does not work. Without some assistance from our government, we will be forced to make some very difficult decisions. Decisions that we had not even thought of or entertained a month ago. Thank you again for this opportunity to speak, and thank you to the government officials who are working hard for a solution.
Thank you, Mr. Young. Before I get into dialogue with the MPs, what community do your employees, what community is your business in?
Hamilton, Ontario.
You're right in Hamilton?
Yes,
so
right in Stony Creek, but part of Hamilton.
So most of the families are right around the Hamilton area that work.
Actually, yes, our footprint is interesting because we are strictly in Hamilton, and then we go further afoot and afield to the United States with no divisions in the U.S. at all. So our total growth model is to have North America be available to us.
Okay, thank you, sir. And we're going to have dialogue with the MPs now. And looking at the time, we have time for probably six slots. And so we're going to start right off the bat with the Conservatives. Mr. Allison, you got the floor.
And once again, thanks to the witnesses for being here. I really feel this is like a surreal time. You know, we're all calmly sitting around the table, but the reality is we're in a very major crisis. And it's kind of like the frog in the pot, right? You know, if it jumps into a hot boiling, he's going to jump right up. But I feel like we're boiling to death here, and that there's going to be some very serious consequences that are going to happen in the next 2 to 3 weeks, the next month. And so, Mr. Young, one of the reasons I invited you here, and we have all the witnesses here, is to talk about that. I don't know if people really understand or appreciate, for all of you guys, but I'll direct it to you, Mr. Young, how difficult it is to acquire new customers. The reality is you spend years, and if we're going to attack and change customers, we've got supply chain issues. There's a whole bunch of things we need to consider because your customers expect quality, and so it's not just leaving a U.S. Supplier going to a Canadian one. There's a whole bunch of things that need to factor out. So you did talk about it briefly, but just talk to us about how complicated it is with uncertainty, not knowing what the plan is, not knowing how long you're going to have to subsidize the tariffs. How on earth can you actually function and make plans for the future when everything is so unsettling?
Absolutely. So I'll try and do that in the 2 stages. So the one point is asking about how long it takes to get U.S. customers. We have had a tremendous partnership with Dofasco, all 3 of our steel mills, but Dofasco has been a real big part of our ArcelorMittal. Dofasco has been a large part of our growth, and as Sean mentioned, it's affecting right in our community, and I'm one of his customers that's dealing with that. Since 2014, we have really grown to that number of, as I said, 270% growth, and it only takes really a couple of times that you are offside for competitive nature, or when you're quoting a job, that you will start to lose your footprint in an area. We are large suppliers to the RV industry. We heard someone speak already about that today. And that is a very, very thin margin business, and we have a great footprint there. We have invested in Janko. We now have 4 lasers that we have put in the last 2.5 years. We have started doing parts business, and that is going to be lost because they will go elsewhere very quickly. The uncertainty you speak about, Dean, is that if we knew the rules and we knew the rules were going to last for the next year, we could maybe make a good business decision. But right now, the last thing we want to do is lay off people. We went through the financial crisis of 2008 and 2009. We did not lay off any workers. We actually expanded in 2010. Our biggest growth has been 2010 to now. It is tens of millions of dollars that we have invested back capitally into our company, and we don't know the rules anymore. And I can tell you that when I say that we will have to have a decision about laying people off, it is real. That is not just saying something to make it a big statement. We're going to have to do that. We do not want to.
Thank you. So I guess the question is, you're already talking about not bringing in people. How long so if nothing changes, in other words, there's no supports announced, there's nothing that happens other than the fact that it's kicked down the road, when do you start laying off people?
Well, those discussions are happening every day. Al Shooten and I sit and we look at each other and wonder, again, how you try to look at things that are possible and probable when you're trying to work out risk in business. And we don't really have an idea of what is probable anymore, but what is possible is actually quite frightening. So I don't know the actual answer as far as how long does it go. We have not done anything yet because that is the last decision we ever want to make. But when we ask the government for help, that actually is a plan. There's going to be money coming in from the tariffs. Tariffs are put in place to help industries that are dealing with either unfair trade or, well, I guess disadvantages, and we need some help. If we got that help, we could at least skate a little bit. We would be just breaking even. We don't have large margins in our business, probably 10 to 12% usually. And so you can see that we're not asking for a handout. We are saying keep us in the game. To your earlier point of how quickly you can lose customers, it is already happening that I have tremendous support of people in the U.S. that are now saying, we'll catch up with you in a few months maybe, and we'll talk again. But for now, we have to cover ourselves. It's very, very frightening.
What's your business is U.S. right at this?
How much?
How much of your business was U.S.?
At least 30%.
30%?
Yes.
Okay. And you see that down 60%?
It's already 60% down in the month of June compared to month over month from April and May.
And you don't see that getting any better as we go?
That's going to get worse.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Allison, and perfect timing. And we're going to move over to the Liberals now. Madame Lapointe, you have the floor.
Bienvenue. Merci d'être. Well, thank you very much, and thank you for joining us this morning. I have a question for you, Mr. Russo. Earlier, you talked about an impact on the supply chain with the tariffs on aluminum and steel, and that would have a direct impact on workers. Now, I'm from Quebec, and as you know, we've got Alma. Aluminum is produced there. In my riding, north of Montreal, we have Eurofoss, which processes aluminum that's exported to the States and elsewhere. Now, earlier you talked about temporary measures that need to be put in place. You also talked about potential layoffs. I'd like to hear you talk about upskills and other issues. Now, in Boisbriand, there are workers who will be affected. How can we improve the situation for them? In that place, they've doubled capacity. Well, yes, clearly we talked about demand, we talked about workers, and that is addressed. They are affected. Now, as you know, we are hearing about layoffs. It's not because sales are declining and because the economy will slow down that all of a sudden our workers should be paying the harshest of all consequences. So what we want are some support measures for workers. We've got models, we've proven them. There are companies, for example, if amounts are provided, it will be to keep people employed and keep them in place because the situation could equally turn around. So we do need to maintain our production capacity and to sell the product and export it. Now, if, however, the situation worsens over a longer period of time, then in that case, we need plans, strategies in place with respect to what we're going to do for workers, because if we have a situation where a group of workers are laid off, well, we need to look at a scenario. The Alma scenario might well be very different from one in BC. The industry is different. So a group that in a short period of time, a working group that could put forth quick recommendations quickly rather, that will take into account input from the unions, from industry, and from the government. Question. Earlier you talked about softwood lumber, about working with the provinces. Could you elaborate on that as well, what your proposal was? Reply. Yes. When it comes to the industry, be it steel or aluminum, we need to have measures put in place to train workers. If ever the industry needs to change, if people need to be reassigned or production needs to be shifted to other avenues. So yes, this is for workers. And it's not because someone works in one area of production in one plant. We shouldn't be identifying their overall capacities and abilities and retraining opportunities. So what I'm saying is that that's not exactly where we need to go in a short period of time. In the very short term, we need to ensure that EI is available, for example, because if people have to be laid off, then we need to ensure that they will have access to existing programs, namely employment insurance. Interesting. Now, Mr. Gallimberti, you talked about steel. You talked about steel produced for the automobile sector. What kind of a percentage are we talking about here? We've talked about pipelines. We've heard other figures. What percentage of steel produced in Canada goes to the automobile sector?
Just to sort of use a generalized round number, normally the domestic steel consumption in Canada is about 1/3 automotive, 1/3 for infrastructure, and 1/3 for energy, sort of oil field use. So that would be a good guidepost. So probably in automotive, slightly over 1/3.
Okay, merci. J'ai fini, je pense.
Yeah, that's it.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm done.
Over to the NDP, and Ms. Rams, you got the floor.
Thank you all for being here on such short notice. I think we're in dangerous waters and a critical point, and it does require some urgent action. And I thank you not only for coming on short notice here today, but bringing concrete proposals of things that we can actually do in this, unprecedented time that we find ourselves in. The first one that I want to comment on is Mr. Rosso, this rapid response working group. I think this is so critical in doing a jobs impact assessment on who will be impacted on the ground is also very critical to communities that depend on these jobs. So I'm wondering if you can tell me if you have been able to secure a commitment from the government or potentially a meeting to discuss this rapid response working group and the potential of that going forward.
We are certainly making the recommendation. We're certainly having talks, but I can't say that this has been committed to at this time. But certainly we are going to work very strongly and make it very clear that we need this kind of a working group that can be more nimble and that can be actually making recommendations and coming up with some solutions as this very dynamic situation evolves. We can have decisions coming out of Washington from one day to the next that throws another monkey wrench or does something else. So we're going to have something that can be very reactive as well as proactive in a very short period of time.
I agree. The other, we haven't really talked a lot about the Table 2 tariffs that we're looking at, and there are folks who I know couldn't make it here today, the recreational boaters, the furniture, a lot of very large sectors in our economy who are concerned about the implications of this Table 2. So we will be, I hope, adding that to our study and having those briefs come forward. My next question really is to Mr. Gallimberti and Winkler and Young, and it's about the product exclusions that are being granted in relation to the products that are available domestically in the U.S. We saw them kind of extend these to some of the other countries, but not to Canada. So I'm wondering what actions, if any, our government could take to increase the likelihood that the U.S. Secretary of Commerce will grant requests to exclude certain U.S. companies' imports of Canadian steel and aluminum on the U.S. tariffs, and the work that you've potentially done around that.
I'll take the first shot. Sure. I think that, and this is something that Secretary Ross raised in the Senate hearing last week. I think that the government of Canada can, and we have welcomed things like steps to strengthen trade remedy modernization, and we welcome the additional resourcing at CBSA, and we welcome the changes to the stenciling regime. I think the government of Canada can continue to look at things like government-initiated safeguard action. We see. Certainly significant diversion of steel to Canada as a result of the 232. I think it's in Canada's interest as good domestic policy to protect steel workers and steel manufacturers to make sure that this activity continues. But I also think that will encourage the United States to, looking at exemptions is one thing. I think ultimately we want to live in a world where there's no tariffs between the two countries, and I think that
Very
is
much so.
another concrete step. And, concrete step that we can take and justifiable as good domestic policy as well.
What I would say is that we're really actively working on this exclusion process. So we've got hundreds submitted, and our customers in the United States, of course, have been really terrific to work with on that process. And both our customers and the legislators who are in our districts in Portland and our states in Portland and in Colorado have really worked very closely with us to approach Secretary Ross as well as many others in the U.S. government around the exclusion process and around exclusions themselves. In addition, I would say that within the Canadian government, it's been, I think, a bit all hands on deck in terms of the exclusion process, but also the approaching of Secretary Ross. And that also includes folks like Premier Moe, who's been very active and went down to D.C. On behalf of those impacted by 232, and I know spent time with Secretary Ross's team as well as many others in D.C. in order to push for some specific proposals around exclusion processes around our particular products, but also more generally for exempting Canada from 232.
I don't think there's only 8 seconds left, so we're not going to be able to squeeze that in. We're going to have to move over to Liberals, and Mr. Sheenan, you got the floor.
Well, thank you very much for the testimony. It was excellent, and there certainly are some very important ideas that you brought forward for us. The rapid response from the Canadian Labour Congress. I used to work for the Ministry of Training College Universities in Ontario, and there was a very similar model, and it can be very successful, so thank you for that. And also for your support of the various modernizing trade measures that we put in place in 2016, 2017, and again this year. And it was rhetorical when I said, if we did not have those in place, we probably don't have a steel and aluminum industry here. So I do agree with more can be done. We should always never ever rest on our laurels. We should always just continue to be nimble and continue to look at various supports. One of the things that I talked about was the when we went out to down to Washington, the various states, talking with different people, was very effective because we're seeing a lot of those congresspeople, senators approaching the administration saying this is wrong. And the reason why I bring that up is last week the Chamber of Commerce, and I must add that the local Chamber of Commerce in the Sioux and Hamilton and Windsor have been very proactive in supporting this. And it made me real proud to see that we have labor, chambers, the steel industry, the mayors, the community standing strong, like in the Sioux and across this nation. One of the suggestions that's been brought forward by Warren Beatty and all the presidents of the chambers of commerce across Ontario, and is to go, yes, I'm sorry, I stand corrected very much, is to go down to and redouble our effort into the United States. And they're saying that they need to also engage their American counterparts. Do you feel that would be a good suggestion that the chambers across this great nation have put forward? Start with Joseph, I guess.
Look, I think any advocacy that can be done in the United States to continue advancing the principle of open and mutually beneficial trade between Canada and the United States is time well spent. I think there are a lot of good points there. I would also say, and this speaks a little bit more to the tariffs, I know that this committee was in Washington recently and met with the AISI and heard, sort of unequivocally from AISI leadership that they were not willing to talk about as an industry an exemption for Canada. I think we have to be resolute in taking action like tariffs and not allowing for exemptions or sort of a Swiss cheese enforcement system, or those efforts that we, expend in having chambers of commerce go down and talk about fair trade are ultimately undermined by domestic forces in the U.S. who believe that they can act against Canada with relative impunity. So I think what we're doing with the tariffs is critically important to also supporting those efforts with the chambers of commerce.
I agree with that, and it's Parent Beatty. I did
yes.
correct myself. I've met him a few times. Anybody else wish to comment on that? That we need to redouble our effort, especially in this letter. They're talking about the tariffs on steel and aluminum. They're also talking about the tariffs that have been hit on the solar panels that are produced here in Canada, including in the Sioux, and the fact that the auto is being talked about next, and that really the summer we should be spending our time down there, unions, business, chamber, steel industry, and that's one of the things that I think that we really need to focus on, as well as taking in your excellent ideas as we prepare for July 1st, which is coming up. Conrad?
I really agree with your comments about redoubling those efforts. I mean, I think, if you think about 232 in the United States, really, of course, the world is impacted in various ways. But if you think about how people feel in the United States, I really think that there's a general feeling that Canada is not the right target, and I think that the more that people in the U.S. Have that awareness, and the more time that legislators and others are spending in D.C. and with the administration, reminding them how different really Canada is, and that closeness of relationship is so unique that I think it really is well spent time, and we definitely encourage it and are thankful for all the efforts people have put in so far.
I agree with that, Conrad. Every time I wake up in the morning in the Sioux and I open up my window, I see the United States. I mean, and they're just it's undefended, it's a friendly border, and they don't get it. Conrad, comments on the, since you're in the business, the TMX project. How important is that in light of the tariffs that we're facing right now?
Mr. Sheenan, you're getting into uncharted water there, and I have to cut you off. So we're going to move over to the Member of Parliament from Ottawa West, Nepean? No, Ottawa Vanier. Ottawa Vanier, welcome to our committee.
Oui. Merci.
Madam Fortier, and you have the floor.
Merci beaucoup.
Go ahead.
Merci beaucoup.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to the witnesses for coming. I clearly understand the complex nature of this issue, and as a new member to the committee, I understand that we need to focus on solutions. You've shared some, and I understand that the impact of the decisions we make will affect the economy, not just one sector. It will have a ripple effect elsewhere. What I'm trying to understand here, and some of you mentioned some examples, deals with measures that need to be put in place to explore, protect corporations and workers. Because that's where, in the short term, the government needs to focus its energy. And I assume in the long term as well. Mr. Winkler, you were very generous. You mentioned that significant measures need to be put in place. Are there some that you mentioned today that would be priority and that we should explore, of course, with the government, the provinces, the territories, and all stakeholders involved in this initiative?
Yes, I think in terms of from a prioritization standpoint, I think that the safeguards are the one area, from our perspective that are really critically important and obviously a really high priority. Of course, the highest priority would be to get on the other side of this issue altogether. But setting that aside, that for us is probably the number one priority. And then, of course, it's already fully going on, but the retaliatory tariffs are also, probably a close second. And then, of course, what everyone else has talked about as well is some of the options for some kind of support within current frameworks for the industries most impacted, like ourselves, especially in the short term, but then also looking out longer term.
Monsieur Young, en fonction de la même.
Now, Mr. Young, based on the same question, you proposed an approach with a solution, taking amounts and using them to support your initiatives. Do you have any other suggestions for the committee today?
I don't think we've really lived in this long enough to think more about how there can be solutions. I think what's really important is to get something today on the record and have people come together and just talk about something like we've proposed. By no means do not hear us say that we think we've got this figured out, but understand that you are hearing from a company that's in the ground that is going to have to deal with your constituents who are going to have to find other work. And that is not a threat. So I don't know where else this can go. I know when we hear from people like Evraz and from ArcelorMittal, this is not saying give money to Janko Steel. This is let's share this money with our entire industry, verified tariff payments. We are not asking for handouts. We are asking to keep us in the game until maybe cooler heads prevail. This will actually then push back a little to the bully that Mr. Trump has been to this industry and our country to a degree. So maybe if we can just, I've heard Team Canada a few times today, and it's been actually really wonderful to hear. Let's keep our industry in the game, find some ways to figure out how to do that with money, and let's have verified payments. Let's do that as a team and find a way to stay until something else happens. I do trust that NAFTA will be negotiated. I don't think there's anyone at the table doesn't think something, maybe not three, but something is going to happen with an NAFTA deal. But when is that? And until then, there is absolute irreparable damage will be done. Not just our company, the entire industry.
How much time?
About a half a minute or so.
Good.
Madame
Monsieur
Fortier,
Rousseau, j'aimerais vous donner l'occasion de peut-être répondre.
Mr. Rousseau, I'd like to give you an opportunity to respond from a Labour Congress position. Well, thank you. In addition to the measures that need to be put in place to ensure the viability of corporations and the industry, specific or targeted measures for workers such as EI. There are agreements on shared work where the maximum period is 38 weeks at present. We would like to see that extended, for example, to 76 weeks. That will provide more time. In addition, we could add eligibility 20 weeks for EI, mobilization assistance for the mobility of workers when they need to travel. They need assistance to find another job, so there could be allocations to help with mobility. We could make it a priority to upgrade or update the skills for workers. So these are measures, existing measures that are in place.
A great expression that we had ever since for years and years about the FASCO. Our product is steel and our strength is people. I think that when we talk about that, let's make sure that we don't weaken the strength of the industry by one iota. And that's where we're coming from.
Thank you, Mr. Rousseau. And
thank you.
We've got time for one more MP, and Mr. Hoback, you've got the slot there. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, witnesses, for being here this morning. You know, I think they're just listening to witnesses from the last round and this round. You know, some of the things are very clear. We must move forward on NAFTA or some sort of deal with the U.S. That needs to be done. We need to figure out a way in the mean term to deal with two situations. A situation like you'd have, Mr. Winkler, where you've got customers that you've already committed to at a certain price, and now you're going across the border at a 25% tariff. And how do you deal with that? And how do you negotiate that? And that's not small dollars, that's big dollars in your case. And then like you, Mr. Young, you've got the same scenario, but you're also telling us you're losing customers. You're going to lose customers, absolutely. And when you lose customers, that means you lay people off. And when you lay people off, then you're ordering less steel, which means our steel companies are going to feel that impact too. So you start seeing the domino effect of the layoffs move through. You know, one of the things I find frustrating is the issues we're facing here with China dumping steel have been here for a while. And the U.S. asked for us to help them. And we could have said, you know what, you're right, Mr. Ross, we need to deal with this. And we probably wouldn't be here today. we'd be like Australia. We'd be exempted without a quota if we'd done that, but we haven't. So this is the scenario that we're in today. So I look at it in a couple ways. Like, I look at it from the consumer point of view and say, okay, we bring in a counter tariff. So my manufacturers on the prairies, Burgo, companies like that, now start paying a lot more for their steel. Their customers are farmers, which were at a farm progress show last week. They're saying, I think I'm going to keep my drill. So already you're having an impact. The domino effect's already starting to happen. Where does it come back to? Into the steel sector here in Canada. So how do you deal with that? Like, how do you move forward? There's got to be a way to still make the U.S. respect this and still say, okay, there's going to be impact for your decision to put a tariff on without having this whole pile of domino effects. And I know the Labour Council, you talked about the employees and all that. All that would be great if the cupboards weren't bare, but we've got a government that's spent crazy the last 2 years, and now we've got to find the revenues in order to do those types of things. So where does that revenue come from? And I like your idea about the countervails. If we're going to do that 25%, there's going to be on some $16 billion, there might be, what, $2, $3, $4 billion coming into the coppers? Well, that shouldn't go to the general revenue. That should come back to the people impacted the most. So, Mr. Young, I'm just kind of curious, if this was to go on for 6 months, 8 months, we've got midterms in the place right now, what does your business look like in November, December?
It will be a much different picture, and as I've said, we will have to make some difficult employment decisions. Something that is really important to also note that if it is just a matter of pushing it out a little bit, and then we find out that we have to maybe make some worker decisions, lay off some people, you may not get that skilled labor back.
Exactly.
They will go somewhere else for a job, and we've actually painstakingly cross-trained our 180 employees so that when we are slower in certain areas, they can work somewhere else. It has been actually a real blessing to a lot of families. I can tell you, during downtimes, that is what's happened in our company. And we never have somebody, okay, you're just this aspect of our company, you're now laid off. That does not happen at Janko. And I think that's actually probably the model that many Canadian companies use. Cross-train. Let's again make sure that we're doing that.
I'd agree with you. Mr. Winkler, you probably have the same scenario in Regina. When you're working on one certain type of pipe, you might be working on another type of pipe that you... So how do you see this impacting your industry? Let's say this goes on to November, December. How is it affecting your future orders? How is it impacting? Because you're a very unique product. Like, you're not something that somebody can gear up and do tomorrow in the U.S. So what do you see happening?
Oh, I mean, let me also repeat about our workforce and the cross-training and the tremendous skills that they bring forward, because making all of these products, but making pipe, it really is an engineered product, and the skills that go into it are tremendous. And in places like Red Deer, we make these premium connections, as well as really some very premium and interesting products that take tremendous skills throughout. And so, of course, for us, the impact is very serious. And since we have a variety of different businesses, some are focused really on the casing and tubing, which is almost entirely we sell into the Canadian market, but right now we face this massive diversion issue, which leaves us with a much weaker order book than we typically have at this time. And then at the same time, right now there's a lot of pipelines being built in the Permian Basin. That's just in North America. The projects move around depending on where most of it's happening. But of course, we also have some Canadian pipeline opportunities as well.
Is there anything we can do as a government to make you more competitive, to help absorb some of that 25%? You're probably going to see a drop in the dollar. You're probably going to see some negotiations on your margins with the sales. But is there other things we could be doing that make life easier, that would actually make you even more competitive, not only with the U.S. at the 25% margin, or 25% tariff,
Be
but
very
actually
short,
globally?
Mr. Hobeck. Your time's up, but very short answer, Mr. Winkler, and then we'll wrap it up.
Well, there are a set of programs in place to help with some of the investment in technologies, and we do hope to take advantage of some of those, because they are really critical for our overall competitiveness, and those will be very important to us for sure.
Thank you, sir. And that wraps up our second round. And witnesses, thank you very much for coming this morning. You represent a lot of people, your businesses, the people you represent, the workers. This is a very serious situation, and again, appreciate you coming and giving the details. Thank you very much. And witnesses, take your seats, please. So we got. Can MPs and witnesses take their seats? Okay, welcome everybody back to our third round. A very busy morning, very important morning for our committee, and then I commend our witnesses for coming here for this special meeting, and also MPs for pulling this meeting together. Very important time and for our workers, consumers, manufacturers on both sides of the border. And so this is our final group, and we have through a video conference we have Mr. Diaz. Thank you, sir. You can hear us okay?
Pleasure.
Okay.
I can hear you just fine. Thank you.
Excellent. So and we also have three other witnesses with us from Forge and Canadian Manufacturers and Exporters and ADF Group. Everybody's on deck. So if anybody's here for the first time in front of a committee, we try to keep your briefings from 5 minutes or less, so we have lots of time for dialogue with MPs. And without further ado, I think we'll go right to Mr. Diaz. Go ahead, sir. You got the floor. And before you start, I'd just like to thank you for the hard work you're doing on both sides of the border and working with the Canada team to try to get her done. So go ahead, sir. You got the floor.
Thank you very much. It's an honor to work with Steve and Christia as we're trying to fix NAFTA. My name is Jerry Dias, and I am the National President of Unifor, Canada's largest union in the private sector. With me is Angelo De Caro. Angelo is the acting director of our research department, and he's our lead policy analyst on international trade. On behalf of Unifor, I want to thank the chair, vice chairs, and members of this committee for the invitation to speak and for accommodating our participation through video conference. I've got 5 minutes, so let me get right at it. U.S. trade attacks on Canada are a clear and present threat to our national economy, period. A trade war with the United States is not looming. It's here already. Last month, I was in Moncton, New Brunswick. I was giving a speech to our members, including those that work in softwood lumber and groundwood paper mills. I arrived to the news that the Trump administration had triggered national security tariffs on steel and aluminum and that Canada was in the crosshairs. I explained in my speech how the $16 billion worth of tariffs equates to about 40,000 direct metalworking jobs in Canada, not including the spin-offs. That includes thousands of Unifor members in aluminum and steel facilities across Canada and in Quebec. I said at the time it was time to stand up, to fight back, that Canada couldn't get pushed around anymore. But as I was making my case, I realized that I was speaking to workers already in the grips of this struggle. I am glad that strong economic conditions have helped our softwood producers stay afloat despite U.S. tariffs. The problem is there is no end to this dispute in sight. It's different for our newsprint industry, which is facing a much more challenging economic outlook. These producers are facing export duties in excess of 30% in some cases. We are monitoring closely situations at mills in Corner Brook, Trois-Rivières, Port Alberni, Powell River, and Crofton. These mills are on the brink, and job loss appears imminent. Yet there has been no enhanced federal support package provided to them, unlike in softwood. It was shortly after I returned from Moncton that I learned about Trump's initiated a national security investigation into the import of cars and parts. Our auto industry directly employs 120,000 people in Canada. About 95% of what we export goes straight to the United States. 2/3 of all imports of autos comes from the U.S. as well. Our supply chains are tightly connected. Suffice to say, any major tariffs on cars and parts won't be good for anyone. How Canada responds to these trade threats is of critical importance. No one wants to see this trade war escalate further, but the U.S. has left us with no choice but to strike back. Unifor supports the proposed countermeasures as laid out by the federal government. The problem is that slapping tariffs on U.S. goods by itself will not keep our factories running or our workers employed. Now is the time for government to step in, to help our key industry weather this storm. That means moving quickly to develop and execute a mitigation strategy, not unlike what was delivered for the softwood lumber industry. The government of Quebec has already offered up $100 million to bolster the steel and aluminum sector. We have to take this opportunity to reinvest in our workplaces and social infrastructure, so a move could actually help our trade diversification efforts. We have to keep skilled workers on the job and avoid permanent layoffs. We have to do that through enhanced work sharing and other measures. Funding social programs like pharmacare would give our economy a progressive competitive edge. Financial supports, including loan guarantees, can help facilities stay afloat, as well as modernize production processes. This should be explored. By getting creative, we can actually backstop these new investments with revenues generated through the proposed counter tariffs, a figure we have pegged at nearly $2 billion. These are just some ideas. We look forward to hearing more. Let's not sit and wait. Canada will not be a casualty in this ridiculous trade war. We won't let that happen. Thank you very much, and we certainly are looking forward to your questions. And while I'm at it, great work, Tracy, on the trade file. Thank you.
Good stuff. Okay, Mr. Diaz, thank you. Well, I'd just like to, we have all good members on this committee, and even the ones that are visiting are doing a really good job. We're going to move over to the ADF group. Mr. Pasquini, General Manager. Go ahead, sir. You got the floor.
Pasquini, thank you.
Pasquini? Okay.
Yes. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to thank you for the invitation to participate in this committee. ADF Group was founded by my grandfather back in 1956 as a blacksmith shop. Today, ADF is a key player in the manufacturing of structural steel components in Canada and in the U.S. The company operates a state-of-the-art facility located in Terrebonne, Quebec, with more than 500 employees. We also operate a facility in Great Falls, Montana, which was built from ground up in 2013. Today, we are nearly 200 people, 200 people at this facility. Many major landscape projects across North America bear ADF's signature, such as Tower 1 and 4 at the World Trade Centers in New York. We have done over a dozen high-rises in New York alone. More recently, we participated in the construction of the new Champlain Bridge in Montreal and are currently working on major airport projects at LaGuardia Airport in New York and Salt Lake City Airport. As you can see from the list of projects, the core of ADF's revenues come from the United States, approximately 80%. Needless to say, these past months have been challenging for our Terrebonne-based plant. These last few weeks have just shook up all of the American market, mainly because of the new imposed tariffs and all the uncertainty surrounding them. The first time we heard of the tariffs was in March, when the first tweet went out from President Trump announcing the U.S. government's intention to impose 25% on steel, 10% on aluminum. At that time, ADF was running the final leg of negotiations for 3 major U.S. contracts for an estimated total worth of several $100 million. These projects would have required creating almost 100 new direct jobs in our Terrebonne facility. In the days following the announcement, we lost all 3 of those contracts, one of which suddenly became a Buy American Act project. We quickly understood that American clients were now afraid to commit with Canadian companies. In response to this major turn of events, we needed to act quickly to adjust for our future. And so, between the month of March and May, we set a plan in motion, including closing our Florida sales office and relocating staff personnel, adjusting our staff numbers downward, letting go 75 people across the entire group, 50 of whom were from our Terrebonne facility, and more recently, we were approved to implement a work-sharing program with the Canadian government for more than 160 of ADF's workers to be able to save their jobs. Their hours are currently reduced to less than 20 hours per work week. Excuse me. Before this trade policy officially came into force, we landed 2 new contracts in the U.S., one of which was a major building on the East Coast and calls for over 14,000 tons of steel. In this particular case, most of the steel has been purchased from steel mills in Germany, Great Britain, and smaller portions from the US. If the Canadian duties are implemented as a response to the new US trade policy, ADF Group will have an estimated setback of at least $500,000 on the raw steel alone. Steel mills in the US have hiked up their prices more than 25% since March 2018. And this new imposition from our Canadian government could be very detrimental to companies such as ADF. Currently, the majority of ADF steel suppliers are U.S. mills. Unfortunately, Canadian mills cannot keep the pace to suffice to the demand in structural steel, oftentimes not having the specific H-beam profiles needed in most of our major projects. Needless to say that if Canadian mills were able to provide us with the right type of product and with the appropriate quantities needed, we would source all of our steel requirements from within. In closing, I'd like to thank you all once again for taking the time, better understanding the current reality of a structural steel fabricator. We hope the best in the upcoming negotiations. These are critical times from Canada and all our trade allies. I hope to have shed a bit of light on the current situation. It'll be my pleasure to answer any questions afterwards. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, and for coming. And as a previous business owner, to change channels that quick, it's hard to do, and for your employees and yourself. So we appreciate you coming here, and we're going to move over now to Mr. Wilson, Canadian Manufacturers and Exporters. Go ahead, sir. You got the floor.
Thank you, and good morning, Mr. Chair and honourable members. Thank you for inviting me to speak on behalf of Canada's 90,000 manufacturers and exporters and our association's 2,500 direct members to talk about U.S. tariffs on Canadian steel and aluminum. And I want to thank all members of the committee for organizing and hosting these critical sessions under challenging times. Manufacturing is the largest business sector in the country, directly accounting for 11% of GDP, 67% of exports, and 1.7 million employees in high-wage, high-skilled jobs in nearly every community across the country. Through NAFTA, our industry has spent the last quarter century building a common North American market. Manufacturing is deeply integrated across the continent and relies on complex supply chains that span Canada, the United States, and Mexico. Disruptions of any of these three countries risk upsetting the balance of North American manufacturing ecosystem. So I will be blunt. We are very, very worried today. The current tariffs on steel and aluminum, the proposed future tariffs on auto, and the specter of a global trade war represent a serious threat to Canadian manufacturing and to the entire Canadian economy. CME has decided to respond to this situation as we always have, by engaging constructively with government, providing practical solutions, and relaying directly to you the thoughts of manufacturers from across the country. We support the government's retaliatory tariffs. They are a just response to the frankly absurd and insulting premise with which the U.S. administration levied steel and aluminum tariffs on Canada. And I would say that manufacturers support the counter tariffs too, and they understand the political necessity to do so. However, they are also very concerned that Canadian counter tariffs will have major impact on their business, especially if the tariff fight is prolonged or intensified. Pain will be felt, of that we have no doubt. So the question becomes, how do we alleviate that pain? This is what I would like to talk to you about today. CME responded to the government's consultation on June 15th after canvassing its members for over 2 weeks. We had a very strong response rate, indicating to us that level of concern is very strong and very high. We'd like to provide the committee with our 5 key recommendations that came out of that exercise. First, we should focus again on NAFTA renegotiation and concluding the deal. It is of paramount importance that the government redouble its efforts on NAFTA and try to conclude a deal as soon as possible. NAFTA instability is a true threat to manufacturing and to the entire Canadian economy, while the tariff fights are distractions and designed to take our eye off the ball. The government is right to say that tariffs and NAFTA negotiations are 2 separate issues, because they are. But the reality is that the U.S. administration clearly doesn't care and is using it to turn up the heat on Canada and NAFTA through tariffs. The government should not fall into this trap and get bogged down into tariff fights. Concluding NAFTA ASAP should be our focus. I would also like to add that CME's original submission to the NAFTA negotiations detailed principles that we still believe NAFTA negotiators should follow to ensure support for integrated manufacturing sector. This includes doing no harm to the economy and integrated manufacturing. Second, to modernize the deal and strengthen manufacturing and make it more competitive globally. Third, to expand the deal and to cover excluded areas. And fourth, to cooperate with the United States and Mexico on our trade with third countries. The second area we we offered to Canadian negotiators is to exclude manufacturing imports from retaliatory tariffs. The current proposed retaliatory list includes a range of manufacturing inputs that are not readily available from Canadian sources. As such, application to the tariffs would double injury to Canadian manufacturers through the cost of the U.S. tariffs as well as the inputs on the Canadian levied counter tariffs. Therefore, government retaliatory measures need to exclude, to the greatest extent possible, manufacturing inputs to avoid disastrous repercussions to the industry and minimize disruptions to manufacturers' integrated supply chains. Number 3 was to introduce safeguards to protect domestic market against third country dumping. The U.S. tariffs pose not only a significant economic threat to Canadian steel and aluminum producers and manufacturers more generally, but could also distort global trade flows of these primary products. Because of Canada's proximity to the U.S. and the size of our domestic market, steel originally intended for the U.S. may be diverted into Canada and dumped by exporters. To protect against this, the Canadian government should immediately implement existing safeguard protections to ensure that Canada does not become a dumping ground for steel and aluminum from other countries. Number 4, develop an emergency relief fund for distressed industries. The federal government should make available immediately financial compensation packages for Canadian businesses negatively impacted by tariffs. This could include direct financial support, holidays from payroll and other taxes, and support for employee training. These funds should be structured in a manner that is trade compliant to ensure Canadian products continue to be exported to world markets. Number 5 is to reinvest tariff revenue into investment support programs more generally. If the trade dispute with the U.S. continues for any length of time, business will continue to avoid investing in Canada like they have been. Canada should consider leveraging the tariffs collected to support business investment. This could be through direct investment supports. It could be matched with private sector money to de-risk technology adoption, for example. Or it could be done through tax code to spur investment, such as updating Canada's accelerated cost of capital allowance rules to match the recent U.S. changes, or more generally in lowering corporate tax rates. To sum up, we must re-engage in NAFTA negotiations to secure a deal as soon as possible. An imperfect NAFTA is far superior to no NAFTA and a trade war with the most important customer. If retaliation is pursued, Canada must target tariffs carefully and limit economic impact on the integrated economy. Further, we believe that safeguards are necessary to limit steel and aluminum dumping into the Canadian market. Finally, we believe the government must act to support potentially distressed companies and establish a broader, more substantial supports to spur investment and competitiveness in uncertain times. We hope our comments provide helpful guidance to the government while you make your final determination on possible retaliation. And while we understand the political need to retaliate, we believe it must be done with utmost caution to not inflict additional economic harm on Canada and its most important trade-exposed sector, manufacturing. Thank you. I look forward to the discussions.
Well, thank you, Mr. Wilson, and thank you again for you always step up to the plate and come forward with us whenever we're doing a study. So thank you for coming and representing your manufacturers and exporters. We're going to move on to Mr. Dmitriev from the Patriot Forge Company. You're the president. You're the head guy. Thank you for making time available to come with us. Go ahead, you got the floor.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee, clerk, fellow witnesses. Thank you for the opportunity to appear today and contribute to the committee's work on this important issue. My name is Robert Dmitriev, and I am the president of Patriot Forge, the largest open-die steel forging producer in Canada. We are a Canadian success story, starting from simple roots and now employing over 250 Canadians in our facilities in Brantford and Paris, Ontario. I'd like to start by emphasizing that these tariffs will have a very significant negative impact on our company. If we are unable to secure relief from the Government of Canada, our business will be forced to close within a few months of July 1st. We simply will not be able to afford to continue operating. Since 1976, we have specialized in producing high-grade specialty steel and metal alloy components that are sold on the global market. We are an essential supplier to power generation, oil and gas, nuclear power, infrastructure, aerospace, and in particular, military. Since my father founded our company 40 years ago, we have experienced continued growth, and the business has expanded rapidly even with the downturn in oil and gas. To meet this growing demand, in 2015, we invested $65 million in our Brantford facility, $10 million of which was structured as a loan under the FedDev Ontario Economic Development Program. We were very grateful for the federal government's support and for its recognition of Patriot Forge as both an innovative, market-leading manufacturer and as an important economic engine for southwestern Ontario. Sadly, today we are facing the most serious threats to our business operations from both sides of the Canadian border. Unfortunately for Patriot Forge, the U.S. tariffs on imported steel products are already making U.S. tariffs on imported steel products are already making it difficult for our operations to continue. We currently ship 90% of our products to the United States. This includes contracts for specialized parts that are sold to the U.S. military through the Canadian Commercial Corporation. In the next 2 weeks, we expect to ship over $1 million worth of product to the United States, which will be subject to a 25% tariff. Since the U.S. tariffs have come into effect, we have been paying the difference for our U.S. customers to avoid losing them to our American competition. Obviously, this is not a sustainable solution, and some U.S. customers are already beginning to question if they should be sourcing from the United States instead. In Canada, the proposed retaliation to the U.S. steel and aluminum tariffs will only add increased stress on Patriot Forge's operations and financial exposure. Due to the high grade of manufacturing standards expected by our customers, the quality of steel alloy required for our production must be sourced from specialty steel makers in the United States. At the moment, there is only one Canadian specialty steel producer, and it does not have the production capacity and technical capability required to meet our demands. We are therefore forced to source our raw material from the United States. A Canadian tariff of 25% on raw steel and metal alloy imported from the U.S. will make Patriot simply unable to compete with our U.S. competitors. To give you a sense of the financial impact, our latest forecast that we have done this past week expects that without tariff relief from the Canadian government, our company will have an average tariff expense of $682,000 Canadian per month starting July 1st, specifically on imported raw material from the U.S. to Canada. We cannot afford these costs, and they will have a disastrous impact on our financial situation and on the viability as a company and as a local employer. In the face of these serious obstacles, we are looking at every option to reduce expenses and reposition our products for export to other markets beyond the United States. However, this will take time. We can change our tack, but not without difficulty and not without the Canadian government's help. We are asking Finance Canada for tariff relief so that the immediate threat to our business is removed and we can try and shift our business to manage the new trading reality. With the July 1st implementation date, we cannot manage without some government assistance to mitigate the serious impact of the Canadian countermeasures. I cannot emphasize this enough. Without relief from the Canadian countermeasures, we will not be able to adapt our operation and we will be put out of business. There are 250 Canadians who work at Patriot Forge in Ontario, and none of us want to be the first economic casualties of a trade war. Thank you for this opportunity to I respectfully call upon members of this committee, as well as all members of the federal government, to please help us find a solution to the serious problem we find ourselves in. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I take your questions now. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, and for being here, and also on behalf of your 250 employees and their families, and this committee is well aware of the spin-off that has on the local economy. So, thank you again, and we're going to go right to dialogue with MPs, and we're going to start off with Conservatives. Mr. Allison, you got the floor.
Thank you. Thank you very much to our witnesses, and Mr. Beezer, thank you as well. You know, when we talked about having this meeting last week, within a day we had over 60 companies reached out to our office saying they'd like to appear. And so to say that we're not in a crisis situation would be the greatest understatement of the year. We just had two very specific examples from companies here today. You know, I've got a list here. Frank Kindred is a manufacturer worried about more expensive stainless steel that is not available in Canada. Back to your point, Mr. Dimitrov, that will threaten jobs of 100 Canadians in Midland who work there. Manufacturers like Red Deer Ironworks, which employs 225 Canadians to make custom products for the oil industry. Walters Group in Hamilton, whose structural steel products can be found in the West Block and Parliament. IMT Defence, operating in Ingersoll and Port Colborne. Ram Industries, and the list goes on and on. And so I guess these are just a few examples. And the challenge is, as you mentioned, Mr. Dimitrov, is that the specialty steel that you need being tariffed on the way in is going to cause irreparable damage. So talk to us about the thought process of trying to find new customers or new markets, and how really 4 weeks or 3 weeks or 2 weeks is not enough time to transition, and how the lead time in your industry takes years to locate and have customers, and once those customers are gone, you're never getting those back because they're going to go and find another place. So just talk to us about the challenge around that.
So the nature of our industry is that we serve these sectors such as power gen or nuclear power or aerospace or defense or other places where there's critical applications where parts have to be particularly robust. And part of what's required is 100% traceability and a lot of detail about the supply chain. So steel makers are vetted by OEMs. They're vetted by industry standard. You get a contract and you get approval to produce under usually what's often referred to as a first article process. To change and redo a first article process, or to sort of go through the process of demonstrating that your manufacturing supply chain from steel maker right to finished products going to the OEM, that those supply chains are robust. To do that requires that the OEM, first of all, agrees that you want to go through it, that testing and verification and auditing of the entire supply chain is done. So while in theory it is possible to find alternative sources in Europe or in Asia, the process cannot be done. I'd say aggressively, it can be done in like 12 months, maybe. And that requires that the American customers also agree to the alternative sources that are not the American steelmaker.
Thank you. And Mr. Bashini, Mr. Dmitriev has already said that he'll be out of business in July 1st or shortly thereafter if something's not done. You've already experienced layoffs. Moving forward, what happens the longer out to your company as we go without anything changing, the uncertainty, no tariff reduction? What happens with you guys over the next 4, 6, 12 months?
The bank account keeps going down, and we're going to have to lay off more people. I mean, we never want to go there, but at some point, our main market is the American market. If Canadian market would have more work for us, then surely we'd work here a lot more. But with the American market being so aggressive currently and just adding 25% on the raw steel, which is almost 50% of the value of your contract, it just kills us, definitely.
Do you want to ask a question?
Oh, sure.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. One more minute. Just a minute? Okay. I was just looking at the big picture, and we're dealing with these tariffs right now, but I'm trying to get, what is the point of view of the Americans on this? And I don't know if you guys saw it, but Secretary Ross was actually in front of their committee. And what he was very clear about is the target wasn't Canada. The security threat is not Canada, but they were using these tariffs as a tool against China. And I know we have to deal with this immediate issue, but he said, Ross described the tariffs as a tool to persuade allies to reduce the amount of Chinese steel that passes through and gets diverted. Some partners, including Canada and the EU, have already taken positive steps in that effort. So in other words, we've started to mark our steel, which is, I guess, what the Americans wanted us to do. And for their viewpoint, they say the only way we're going to solve the global steel overproduction and overcapacity is getting all the other countries to play ball with us. And he said, while they're bitterly complaining about the tariffs, the fact is they're starting to take that kind of action, which if they took it sooner would have prevented this crisis. And that's what I found very disturbing for me, because we had Minister Freeland here last week, and she said that they had conversations, they were made aware of this last year. And I was wondering, Mr.
So you're going to have to
Dimitrov,
just, sorry, Mr. Carey,
Oh.
this is going to have to be a comment and there might be room for you guys to get a question, and so just finish your comment because your time is up.
I was just going to say, do you feel that this has been brought about from the big picture of the illegal dumping of steel into the North American markets, and would you support a coordinated international effort to decrease this? Because Canadians expect, our automobiles, our aerospace industry to be using quality steel and quality aluminum, and the diversion from China means that we don't get steel and aluminum that's the same quality. Would you support that type of action moving forward?
I have to do a little intervention here, and it's a really good question, but he has no time. But he's going to have the floor later on, and you can take that question up the next time around. Okay, we're going to move over to Liberals. Madame Lapointe.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to the witnesses for joining us today by video conference. And I will have some questions for you, but I'll start with Mr. Peschini. You are on both sides of the border. You're in Terrebonne and in Montana. There are people in my riding who work in Terrebonne. You talk about those employees. What kind of strategy have you put in place, because you're on both sides of the border, to try to keep as much business as you can? Because you talked about some 80% of your production going to the U.S. Well, clearly, purchasing steel in the U.S. is something we try to limit, because at present we know that there will be the tariffs imposed. So we purchase what we can abroad or in Canada if we can. And for U.S. business, well, it's the status quo, because business in the U.S., it's on the same playing field as other American companies. So other American companies are purchasing steel the way we do in the U.S., and so that's a bit of an advantage. But the disadvantage is our facility in Terrebonne. As we move forward, the more projects we have, the more difficult it'll be to be competitive. Question. So it's to mitigate the impacts then? There are some jobs that you can't keep in Terrebonne that could possibly be sent to Montana or elsewhere? Reply. Well, for management, that's easier in some respects, but for people on the ground, in the assembly line, in manufacturing, etc., it's impossible. The problem with the plant in Montana compared to the one in Terrebonne is transportation. It's too costly to just shift production to Montana or from Montana to Montreal. So there are very few alternatives. Question. We had a discussion with the CLC, and I'll have some questions for Unifor in a moment, but people working in these areas are highly skilled workers. What do you want to see put in place so that we can keep those people in the industry? Well, earlier, a gentleman whose name I've unfortunately forgotten made some comments. We are currently on a shared program with the government. And now a period of 26 weeks isn't very much given the current situation. Clearly that needs to be extended, or we need to find a way to have that extended. With everything that's currently happening, we can't see the future without that type of a measure. So it would provide more security for our employees, for all staff, to know, in fact, that that measure could be extended. Mr. Young also talked about tariffs and a strategy there, sharing. And that's something that is a very interesting idea. It's something that could help us. Question. In Terrebonne, you're talking about helping out with the contracts. Yes. Well, thank you. I have a question for Mr. Diaz. Good morning to the two of you. Now, earlier we heard from the CLC, and they talked about measures to help keep the jobs in the sector. What would you suggest on your side?
Question. We need to make sure that the jobs that we currently have within the key industries, that we find a mechanism for them to stay. So, for example, we'll take a look at the auto industry. We're going to have to start to make some different decisions, because the overwhelming majority of the steel that goes into Canadian assembled vehicles come from the United States. So as a mechanism to ensure that steelworkers here in Canada stay employed, we're going to have to make sure that there's a shift of where the steel is going to be. You know, frankly, it should be shipped to the Canadian assembly plants from Canadian steel operations. Number two, we need to buy ourselves some time, and the discussion about 26 weeks of work sharing. Obviously, we're going to have to find a mechanism to expand that. So, we are going to have to put together some monetary programs to shore up the companies that are facing the immediate crisis. But B, we need to put a mechanism in place that keeps workers employed till we get through this difficult period. My concern is, I don't mean to belay this, but I don't believe anything's going to happen until after the midterm elections in the United States. The unfortunate reality of whether or not it's NAFTA or the tariffs, this is all about politics. It's not about economics in the eyes of Trump. But of course, the economic hardship is significant. So this is really about, in my opinion, a minimum from here till November. We need to make sure that everybody's shored up, and then we'll see what happens after the midterms.
Thank you, Madam LaPointe, Mr. Diaz. And we're going to go to the NDP. Ms. Ramsey, you've got the floor.
Thank you so much, and thank you all for being here today. It's a sobering conversation that we've been having this morning. But the consistent message today has been, that we know that the U.S. doesn't care about implementing these tariffs, and it's become crystal clear that we can't predict what Trump is going to do. I'm extremely worried what he'll retaliate with after the July 1st date, in particular, given what you're saying will immediately happen to some of your businesses, those folks that are here today. We need to move now to protect jobs. And I don't think I'm the only one sitting in this room with a pit in my stomach right now that's telling me we have to do something immediately. Quebec came out with a package for workers of $100 million. We've yet to see anything come out of the federal government. I don't understand what they're waiting for. We need something immediately to offset all of the things that you've brought forward. I know that Unifor represents 8,000 people in the aluminum and steel, and the auto sector more broadly. The numbers that came out last week of losing 1 in 5 jobs if these auto tariffs come on would devastate us beyond anything we've ever seen in southwestern Ontario and a lot of portions in the country. I want to ask Unifor specifically about some proposals on how we can allocate the tariffs that we're going to be receiving, if you have an idea of how we should use that money to provide those supports for workers.
Yeah, thanks for the question, Tracy. I'm happy to field that. So, like we said in the opening remarks, when you look at the proposed countermeasures that has been laid out by the government leading up to this consultation, we did some quick costing on that, and we're looking at nearly $2 billion that would be generated through that piece. So there's a lot of money to work with. And I think one of the success stories we've seen in a way is the quick movement on the softwood lumber action plan, which was in large measure a mitigation plan. The difference with that plan is that this was money that didn't come from a new revenue stream. So we have some new opportunities here to think about how we would approach this. So, in the case of the impacts, and I think, our figures are showing, in excess of 40,000 direct jobs, at least that are going to be touched by these tariffs from the U.S. The magnitude is going to be much larger than, what we've seen so far. So talking about enhanced work sharing, other employment insurance top-up measures, all contemplated in the softwood lumber package. But I think that these are things that we should consider here. But the big ticket item, which Quebec was very quick to move on, is the idea of trying to keep these facilities operating. And that's where there's money to be used for reinvestment, which is good. There's money that can be put through loan guarantees, also a good measure. And then in addition to that, as we mentioned in the opening remarks, is thinking about other competitive advantages we can look at through broader social programs. If you ask any manufacturer, our healthcare system is a huge benefit and a cost saver when we're talking about cross-border trade. Now's the time to be maybe making more movement toward a new pharmacare program, something that would also mitigate the cost, keep skilled people in Canada, but also alleviate some of those extra cost burdens. Those are just a few ideas that we've been thinking about, and that $2 billion could come in handy in terms of trying to put that towards good use.
A point of frustration for me has been the fact that we've sat around for a year now waiting for this 232 decision without a plan in place. We now have auto tariffs looming with potentially no plan in place, and we haven't even been able to fully address at this committee the implication of that on our communities and on workers. How is Unifor preparing for these potential auto tariffs to help those that you represent on the ground?
Well, first of all, it would be devastating to the entire industry. There's not an assembly plant in Canada that will survive a 25% tariff because almost everything we build goes to the United States. So there's no way that we can say, well, the effect is going to be marginal, because just the opposite will be true. So the question becomes, what do we do? And we have to retaliate. And I realize that's a focus of some concern amongst some that are on this panel. But ultimately, I take a look at what the United States is doing. When they first imposed tariffs on softwood lumber, we didn't do anything. And now they're having a devastating impact. When they slapped tariffs on paper, we didn't do anything. When they came after our aerospace sector, that surprisingly and fortunately got settled in U.S. courts, but we didn't retaliate. Now it's steel, now it's aluminum, now it's cars, now it's auto parts. So by doing nothing didn't change Trump's course of events. As a matter of fact, the less we did in the beginning, the more it left us vulnerable for more tariffs. So now we're in a situation where we have to fight. There's just no other way. We can't sit back and say, let them keep slapping us with tariffs. So we're going to have to be, and as ridiculous as it sounds, because it is ridiculous, we're going to have to be as punitive as the United States is. So what can I say to our members who are going to be negatively impacted? We're going to have to make sure that the federal government puts into place significant programs today to ensure that we not only survive the short term, but the long term. We can't have the death of our number one industry in Canada taken away from us. It's an $80 billion a year industry. And if you take a look at the direct and indirect jobs, you're looking at about 500,000 jobs there alone.
Thank you, Mr. Diaz. And we're going to go to Liberals. Mr. Duran, you've got the floor.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président. Ma première question.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I'd like to thank the witnesses for being with us today, this afternoon. Mr. Pacini, you said that you had to import the bulk of your steel or metallic or metal-based components, and then you had to re-export it from Terrebonne. I assume it serves the eastern market. But did you have this conversation with the providers of those products in the United States? Did you talk about what's happening, the fact that it's not good for both sides of the border, that there's an impact back at home, and that now you need to look to the Canadian market in order to fill those orders? That will have an impact. It'll have an impact on U.S. workers at some point once we get to July 1st. Are you talking about Great Falls, or are you talking specifically about Terrebonne? Well, you said that you imported the majority of the material you need from the U.S. because the Canadian market couldn't provide it. That is correct. So all of the imports, then, that you will be bringing in as of July 1st, once the tariffs are in place, that will have an impact. Yes. And you said yourself that you were going to look to the Canadian market to see if you could fill those orders. But did you have that discussion with the subcontractors in the United States? Did you say, well, look at the impact that it's having? Well, clearly we have a discussion with certain clients. They're very cautious to get involved with a Canadian company. There's no interest. They don't want to commit because they don't know the future, nor do we, and they don't know what will happen. So the hot potato is who's going to pay? Who's going to pay that 25%? The client? Us? Who's picking up the tab? So the clients are saying, well, we're going to pick up this material from a U.S. company because the cost will be lower, and they don't want to get involved. Now, clearly, we have expertise, knowledge, goodwill. But the U.S. client, at the end of the day, especially these days, is simply looking at the price. It's the bottom line. They're looking at the cost of the building and whether or not the builder is qualified. So we're stuck, really, between a rock and a hard place on this. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Pacini.
Did a few recommendations for this committee to look at, and one of the I think point number 4, obviously point number 1 on the NAFTA renegotiation. Are you getting a signal that we're not at the table, or just?
I think generally the talks, by the sounds of it, have stalled, and that's a huge problem. This is, and Jerry's nodding, and yes, that's the bottom line. Is this goes away if NAFTA is done? That is, they've made it very clear in the U.S. I know in Canada we keep saying they're not tied. They're tied in the eyes of the U.S., and that's all that matters. And so we need to figure out the path forward, whatever that path is, because the consequences of the economy are too great. And so where are they right now? I'm not. I don't really know exactly where they are, but they certainly have been delayed from where we had hoped they would have been by now. That's for sure. And that's not pointing the finger at Canadian negotiators. That's just a reality of the situation.
No, because I think the message has been clear. We're at the table. It's just a matter it takes 2 to dance, right?
3.
But on point number 4, the emergency direct financial
Yes.
funds, has there been a dollar amount attached to that, or?
No, and we've seen, I think as was mentioned, 100 million from the Quebec government was just for steel and aluminum.
Yeah.
It would be, I don't know what the dollar amount would actually be. It would be very large, though, if you look at Canada-wide and the direct impacts are going to come out of this. And it's great to say we'll support companies and their employees through work sharing and stuff like that. I'm more worried that the companies won't be there in a couple of months. And there will be no employees to support through work sharing. So there is going to be short-term, there could be some significant short-term pain. And the issue is a ripple effect. So let's just take an auto parts supplier, for example. If an auto parts supplier is running on 5% margins and all of a sudden that their parts coming back in are 10% more expensive, they're now in the whole 5% on everything they're making in Canada. How long will they be able to operate for? How much money do they have in the bank to be able to withstand that? And then what are the ripple effects as if one auto parts supplier goes down, when's the next one down the line? Because there's always a next one. And so I'd be looking really closely at the kind of tier 2 and 3 suppliers, the smaller part suppliers into the industry and what their health status is like. The larger ones tend to have a bit more flexibility in pricing and have a bit more weight to push back to their customers on. But the smaller guys don't have that flexibility and will be trying to absorb it, and frankly won't be able to absorb it for very long. So, and then we don't have to worry about work sharing the rest of it because they just won't be in business to even worry about it. So that's the part that I would look at immediately, and that pain will start happening over the summer.
Thank you, sir, and that wraps up your time there, and that wraps up the first round. But looking at the clock, we got time for 2 more slots there. So, Liberals, you got the first one. Go ahead, Mr. Sheehan.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the presentation, and again, some excellent ideas. One of the things that you had mentioned, Matthew, is that manufacturing accounts for about 11% of the GDP. It's estimated that Algoma Steel in Sault Ste. Marie, which is a manufacturer, contributes 40% of the GDP locally. That's just them. That doesn't even include Tenaris. So we have significance, and in Sault Ste. Marie, where it's extremely significant, it's like this in aluminum towns and some other steel towns, where there's a smaller community. Is if someone loses their job, they can't drive 20 minutes to get another manufacturing job. So it's critical that we have the right supports in place while this unacceptable tariffs are happening. And I do agree with your comments that the best solution is a NAFTA deal. But in the meantime, we've heard some really good ideas about supporting workers through work share. And I think that one of the things that we can do, work share, rapid response, we've heard from some of the other people. Also, some other have suggested that the government could play a role in investing and modernizing our manufacturing facilities through the CIIT program that was in the budget in 2018. We haven't really heard about that, but do you think that's a good idea, that companies should also take a look at the 50-cent funding and supports to invest in manufacturing?
So here's the problem. We supported CIF. We worked really closely with Minister Baines in his office. It's a great program, except it takes forever to get money out of it. Okay. So when you're talking about short-term emergency situations like we are today, we need immediate relief, not something that might happen in 18 months or 2 years. And I use the word might. Since that program's been announced, we have heard very many successful companies have gone through it. It takes them a year and a half or so. But we've also heard companies have gone through a year and a half and then were denied at the end of the year and a half. Mm-hmm. It's not going to work. And that's why we like things that are right in the tax measure. Don't make it granting programs where companies have to apply for certain things. Make it more outcome-based. If you invest, you get X. Cut, clean, simple, small companies, large companies, everyone can apply to it just through the tax code. Way, way easier, and it's not some bureaucrat who doesn't understand the industry or the pain they're going through making the ultimate decision, which tends to be what happens under a lot of these programs. Again, those programs are great, but not for this type of situation.
So what your recommendation is to expedite the CIF program, if you will, for steel and aluminum companies?
Correct. That's why something like an ACCA change, which is already on the books, would help a lot. So that directly gives cash back to companies who are investing today, and which puts cash in their pockets, something that all parties have supported in the past and something that's already on the books and the U.S. have done.
Robert wanted to...
Yeah, I would agree that definitely investment in technology and things that can be done to make our industries and players in our industries more competitive with American operators is definitely something that we at Patriot we're doing on our own. We haven't applied for funding through that program yet, although we're aware of it and have considered it potentially down the road. But definitely that's a good idea, but to the point of this being like a critical and an imminent threat to us, right? Like, I'm not even right now, I'm not even asking for assistance in the form of additional funds. What I'm looking for is don't start tariffing me in the, like, with no, like, 4 weeks notice is practically no notice. The problem I have is that I won't make it to the point where those investments will help me, because now I have this unnatural barrier that's been raised by the federal government's actions that have not allowed me to make the necessary changes because my industry takes so long for changes to happen. That's like a fundamental thing. Like it's an immediate problem. What's going to happen on July 1st? That's an immediate problem. I suppose it could change between now and Sunday, but I mean, I'm going on the assumption that what was announced is going to happen, and I was told by through the media, the Minister of Foreign Affairs says Canadians like to, hope for the best and prepare for the worst. Well, I'm telling you, like, I'm preparing for the worst, and it is not a good thing, and I need help now.
So you supported the consultation period, and your position is that the tariffs should not apply to you. Now, I have a question on your situation, though. So you import steel. I'm just trying to think about this. You import steel. I got that in your testimony. Then you make a product, and then you export it. Is America one of your markets?
So 90% of my product ships to the United States.
So you'd be tariffed again? Is it a double whammy?
Depends on the product, but many of them are.
So it's a double tariff for you?
Yes. And so in the context of power generation, right, like gas or steam turbine generator components, so there's 3 major OEMs in the world that make those things. Strategic decisions, I fly to Japan or Germany to get the orders for, but I ship my product to Georgia or to North Carolina, okay? I'm going to be paying tariffs on that product when it ships, but I'm selling to the world, but I ship to the United States, and I'm getting tariffed on it. That's what's happening.
Thank you, sir. And, well, your time is up, so we have to move on, and we only have time for one slot, and the Conservatives got it. And so I'm going to go right to Mr. Carey because he was almost finished. He had a question, but go ahead, sir. You got the floor, and you're going to split it with Mr. Hoback. Go ahead.
Yeah, and I'll try to be really quick, but I'm really listening to Mr. Dmitriev, and we've listened to other witnesses today about these tariffs. Counter tariffs are going to be very harmful for some people, and understand the importance of retaliation. But I wanted to bring up the point that maybe there's another thing we should be looking at, because if we get into the Americans' viewpoint, and I'm trying to understand that, their issue seems to be dumping of Chinese steel long term. And we found out last week when Minister Freeland was here, they knew about this tariff action. Like last year, they had a meeting at the highest levels in Italy with the Prime Minister and Mr. Trump, so they were aware of it. There was nothing in the budget. There didn't seem to be a plan. I was kind of criticized because I was asking the minister, what's the plan for auto? We can't just sit on our butts here. We have to get moving. So with Mr. Ross saying that if they took this action sooner, it would have prevented the crisis, maybe do you think that there's another thing we should be doing right now? And I wanted to ask you, Mr. Dmitriev, should we be maybe looking at with the Americans? Apparently they're looking for partners, with global partners to make this tariff action work. Should we open up that page again and say, look, maybe if we work with you on this action in the big picture, will all these issues that we're dealing with right now go away, or will it help us move closer to a NAFTA solution? Because you seem to be in the gravest situation of any of the witnesses we've had here.
I think that it would, like, from my, I don't want to pretend that I know everything about all this larger context of what's going on, but certainly it would seem to me that if Canada and the United States had close to, if not mirroring, regulations on how things that were coming into North America were going to be tariffed or impacted, that it should be easy to get some agreement that we could have a shared market internally. I don't know to what degree that is a simple thing to do, or to what degree that is a complicated thing to do, and I'm not going to try and pretend that I have any insight into that. But
well
it
apparently
seems
all they wanted was a stamp of country of origin to make sure it was Canadian steel and aluminum, and we are doing that. But I'm saying it took a year.
I'm not aware of those details. I don't know.
All right. Well, Randy?
Yeah, I think I'm going to go to you, Mr. Wilson. We've talked lots about competitiveness in the past, and we've got a 25% tariff on steel, 10 aluminum. Can we make up some of this 25% in being more competitive? Can we do things in government to make you actually more competitive and just look at it and say, okay, let's not put the tariff on. Let's just become more competitive and absorb it somehow in the margins or in our ability to produce something cheaper, better. Is that an option? Is that something we should also look at?
So, yeah, I think it is critical that we look at that. But I think the problem we're in right now is the short-term nature of the actions. And between now and Monday, I don't think there's enough time for the government to act to make us more competitive. This is not a new issue, though. This is something going back to the last government. We spent a lot of time talking about this. Goes back 5, 6, 7 years we talked about these issues. And frankly, we're just not as competitive as we need to be in Canada from an investment attraction perspective. And that impacts long-term competitiveness of companies. It's not a short-term issue. It's all long-term.
So then
that's tax rates, that's investment supports, it's a wide range of things. But again, those are mid to long-term issues, not Monday issues.
I only get 5 minutes, unfortunately. So then you came back to NAFTA and the importance of getting this done. I think everybody we've heard today, whether you're for the tariffs or not for the tariffs, say get this done. So would you agree that we need to simplify our process and actually look at NAFTA and go back to the basics and do a basic trade deal?
I would just say that our number one recommendation back to the government in the tariff retaliation was to focus on NAFTA. So that to us is the number one priority. Applying tariffs, we understand the need to retaliate, but we need to fix the base problem, which is NAFTA in the first place. And we think it should include things like working cooperatively with the U.S. and Mexico on dumping of products into North American market. We think that's part of the package, which we recommended a year ago. I don't know how much discussion there ever was taking place, but we think there's a path forward on NAFTA. That should be priority number one. Yes, we need to retaliate because there's short-term priorities, but there's ways to get around some of the short-term pain. We believe in that as well. And try to hammer out that NAFTA deal in the very short term. Hopefully not October or November, as was suggested earlier, but maybe something even as soon as September.
Okay, and then we have to throw in Mexican elections. Have you considered the risks involved in that, in this whole negotiations on NAFTA with that happening here July 1st and what the outcome can look like?
From what
that's a
we've
risk
been,
that we haven't even looked at.
Well, from what we've been told, we've certainly looked at it. What we've been told is that the new government is ready to negotiate, whoever that new government is, immediately after July 1. The negotiations will resume shortly after because of their willingness, and maybe not as hostile to the negotiations as we originally thought they might be, which is positive.
See, one thing I think this committee's done very well, we've done a good job educating members of the House and the Senate and governors. But what we sensed from them down there last time is they don't have the ability to take that education, that knowledge, and convince the President, the White House, what should be done. Any advice to do that? Because that was held up to the PMO and the Prime Minister. So what would you advise the PMO and the Prime Minister right now as far as his relationship with Trump? Keep in mind that
a short answer would be good.
He hated the leader from North Korea, and 2 weeks ago he was hugging him. So,
quick answer would be good.
Well, I don't know if there is a quick answer to that, but I'd say just don't forget that they are our number one customer and they're our number one client. We need to work with the U.S. regardless of the political realities of any situation.
Thank you, Mr. Hoback, Mr. Wilson. So that wraps up this segment, and we're a little over time, but we did well catching up, thanks to the MPs and the witnesses, of course, and the technical staff for getting us back on track. Thank you. This was a very short notice meeting, and I appreciate witnesses for changing their schedule to come here quick. Many of you are in business and represent a lot of employees, and we heard perspectives from not only from your office, but from the people that work on the floor to consumers, and very productive meeting. And I'm just going to remind, there was a lot of witnesses that couldn't come here. We are going to be getting their submissions, and I encourage MPs to reach out to any stakeholders out there to get their submissions in by the end of July, and we'll continue with this study, and we'll go forward. So that ends our meeting, and take care, folks.
Thank you, Mark.